Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast, episode 82. I'm Steve Smith. I'm with Brandon Flanagan. We're sitting in the FM Tennis Performance Center in Boynton Beach, Florida. Beautiful Boynton Beach. I called it Brandon Beach today.
Brendan Beach, I think is better.
Brendan Beach. Tonight, the tennis court at Vic Braden. The tennis court's at Mistake Center. This is a repeat performance. This is, as I said, number 82. Cole Reeves, dedicated tennis teaching professional based in Arkansas. We had a podcast and it didn't record, but we think there's value for sure, 100%. Like to say we know there's value, and we're going to talk to him again.
Feels like deja vu all over again.
Deja vu.
Yogi Berra?
With Hey Boo Boo.
That's the wrong one.
Oh, you're talking about, yeah, I'm thinking of Yogi Berra. With I coached a coach from Greece, and he really liked yoga. True story. He can't make this up. So he comes over to the United States, and he starts studying yoga. Or no, he comes to the United States and he wants to experience yoga in America. Yeah. He buys some books, whatever. So he just quickly buys a book. It's all Yogi Berra, so he can just recite.
Wow.
No one goes to that restaurant anymore. It's too crowded.
It's not over till it's over.
Yeah, Yogi Berra. So the cartoon character is
Yogi Bear.
Yogi Bear. Boo Boo. Great cartoon. Arkansas. What do you know about Arkansas? I took some notes on Arkansas.
I remember in third grade, one of my friends said Arkansas, and he got made fun of really, really bad for a little while. Some old-fashioned bullying. Not condoning bullying, but some old-fashioned bullying.
It's actually. I read it's against the law. And I said, there's a penalty. When we did speak to Cole, he said, no, we'll shoot you. But this guy's dedicated. Let's get him on the phone.
It was also from Arkansas. It's Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton, Johnny Cash.
Got to bring him up.
Howdy.
Howdy. Is that what they say in Arkansas? Howdy?
Howdy doody.
Howdy doody.
Cole
We were saying this feels like deja vu all over again, Cole.
Yes. I'm so excited to be back on the podcast for a second time.
Well, you and I talk quite a bit. We talk on a regular basis, but I thought it was an outstanding podcast, so we'll have to see if we could repeat it. But that's not bad for 81 tries. We had to go back up to bat again, struck out.
Well, this is the unofficial 82nd episode now, right?
Yeah. So we skipped one, but
you joined the short list of guests who are going on their second run here. That's pretty good.
I know exactly. I'm honored. I'm the youngest, probably. Yeah.
I think you are. Yeah. I was going to say I'm always been one of those tennis players who will hit an ace immediately followed by a double fault. So I'm not too confident about tonight. So I think last week we did this, I felt like we hit an ace, and hopefully we don't double fault.
Yeah. No. We have had. Is it just Dave Anderson? Has somebody been on more than once? Just Dave Anderson. I think we feel like we've had people on twice because, for example, we dedicated a podcast to Jim Lair, and then we had Jim on. But,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel honored. I'm in the same category as Dave Anderson now. I quickly made a jump in the industry.
That's one thing that we're trying to do is not be a magazine, but to try to just reinforce some important messages. But let's tell our listeners about your tennis background. The word journey is what people use now. Where did the journey begin?
Don't stop believing.
Yeah. So, a bit unconventional, the tennis journey for me, I feel like everything started a whole lot more with everything else besides tennis. Growing up in South Arkansas, I played, it was more, you talk about range and whatnot, the book range every now and then. And I played all kinds of different sports. I played, really got into roller hockey and speed skating at a young age. Small town that I lived in called Caddo Valley was really a truck stop town that had a skating rink. Kind of an odd combination. We had a few truck stops, a McDonald's, Wendy's, Taco Bell, and a skating rink, and had a passionate young coach named James Hall that lived there and just kind of nurtured a really cool environment for me and my two older brothers to spend a lot of time hanging out at the skating rink. There really wasn't anything else to do in a town of 350 people. And so we spent a lot of time playing roller hockey and speed skating and traveling around for that. And then I played all kinds of other sports, football and baseball and basketball. And then my dad's drag raced for 40 years. And so when I wasn't playing sports, I was generally hanging out in the shop or going to the races with him. We would travel all over. We had this routine for years where we would go on Friday nights to Paris, Texas, Saturdays to Prescott, Arkansas, which was 30 minutes from our town. And then Sundays we would go to Centerville, which was 2 hours from our town, and drag race all weekend long since I was a baby. And so I grew up around drag racing and roller skating for the first 10 years. And then I started getting more into the drag racing and working on cars through the teenage years and going through junior high and high school. I played football, I played basketball, I played baseball, but I always would spend more time really working on cars and drag racing. And I grew up at the racetrack. It was my first job. I actually got into from 14 to 18 promoting the racetrack and running drag races. I think I actually have probably one of the unofficial records for biggest drag race ever in Arkansas. I had like 125 cars from all over the U.S. and 5,000, 6,000 spectators. Really similar to people watch TV. You see there's a show called Street Outlaws, but that basically was what was going on at our track. I grew up at the racetrack, and then when I was in the 10th grade, I got into playing tennis. My niece was actually a good tennis player in South Arkansas, and went out, wanted to beat her, just to mess around with her. She was just a few years younger than me, and got into tennis and fell in love with it. And in our town, a lot of team sports, tennis nobody really played on the tennis team. So I thought I was so good. It was me and nobody else really playing in town. And so got into tennis the last couple of years of high school, played in that. And then I moved to Northwest Arkansas. And quickly I figured out that the college scene wasn't for me, and that I really wanted to teach tennis. And so I'm going on 16 years now. I've been coaching.
Can you talk a little more about drag racing and just explain that to some of our more international listeners who might not know what that is? Or
Oh, yeah. Yeah, international. So drag racing, 2 cars. The track that we were at, you have 2 cars that go up and the starting line and all that stuff. So a lot of times it's who's the fastest and who gets to the finish line first. But the racetrack that we were at was the 8th mile and 1,000 foot track. It's a lot of stuff that you see on TV or you hear people doing. It's a quarter mile stuff. Movies Fast and the Furious kind of highlighted that in the early 2000s. And again, that shows Street Outlaws. But in the U.S., like there's the USTA in tennis, there's the NHRA, National Hot Rod Association. But there's another one called the IHRA. But yeah, people, everything from people that have full on, it's a car that they work on and they tinker with and they only drag race. It's not even street legal, to people that show up and just have their car that they drive down the street and have different classes they run in, do modifications. But yeah, my dad did what was called bracket racing, which would basically be you would put a number on your car that you think you were going to run, and you try to run close to that without going too fast. But I fell in love in the early 2000s with what was called heads-up drag racing, and it was all this nitrous and turbo and superchargers, and basically all these people that were trying to put all these enhancements on their cars to run as fast as they could, and it was really dangerous. I've seen my share of really bad wrecks with cars, flipping in the air 20 feet and going for 360s and blowing up and all kinds of stuff. But it's a lot of adrenaline and a lot of excitement when you're there. And for me, like I said, I had a really unique situation where I got interested at a very young age. I built this fan website at our racetrack, and it just blew up. It did really well. A lot of people coming through, and then the owner of the track let me start running races, and they did well, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was a lot of fun.
So someone who drag races, are they more of if they were a tennis player, are they more of a baseliner or a serve and volleyer?
Ooh, yeah. Well, I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning, so I was a baseliner. But when I figured it out, I started serving balling. But yeah, I definitely like to be efficient to get to the finish line quick.
One more drag racing question, then we can move on from the drag racing. Maybe we'll come back to it later if we need to. But what sport is acceleration more important in, drag racing or tennis?
Well, yeah, no, that's a good one, but definitely both. But yeah, and that's the thing is there's in drag racing, there's different ones. Like I said, there's the heads up drag racing, what's first one to the finish line based on the rules. And then there's other ones that it doesn't matter if you're fast or not. They even have that style of bracket racing where one car can be faster than the other and they'll let one car take off and then the other one has to wait and then they try to catch them and they try to hit the finish line at the same time. But, same thing in tennis, there's different strategies, there's different situations. You don't always have to be the fastest.
Well, the title of the building we're sitting in, FM Tennis Performance Center, the key word is performance. The car has to perform, and the body has to perform. I was telling someone today, in ice hockey, now everyone can skate. And just with, through my father, engineer, but a hobby coach, and my 3 older brothers, sisters were in on it too, that when I went off to hockey school in Toronto to learn how to skate, I was one of the only kids that realized I needed to listen to the figure skaters. Most of the hockey kids were, I'm not going to listen to that guy. He's wearing figure skates. So performance to learn how to skate, but actually to learn how to hit the tennis ball. But no, we talked about it before. Is that you're such a clean, proven technician with your time, your students. I think at Kaylin, it's like everybody over here. She, maybe she didn't have the most reps or she hadn't played the most sets, but she was cleaner, like forehand volley, right down the whole checklist. But tell us about your building. You've built homes as well, so obviously you have the mentality for that. Excuse the beep. That's a tennis parent calling in. Can you still hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Lots of phone calls.
With the building that really came from, I had a good friend that was in construction and building homes and kind of walked me through the door of what it takes in Arkansas to build your own home. And it's funny, I think back when I was young and I liked school for reasons other than the academic side of it, and I always found myself, I had my backpack. In high school I never carried. I still have nightmares because I don't know how I passed high school, but I never carried books home. I always, if you looked at my backpack, I had race car magazines and, probably started being tennis magazines there towards the later part of high school. But I also always loved to draw, and I would always draw home designs and was into art quite a bit. I actually did a lot of art in high school. But then when I had this neighbor turned into a really good friend named Chad, and he really showed me kind of what people had to do to build houses. Got into it, really liked it, and I think it's super, super, super neat to be able to take a lot of the same concepts that I grew up with as far as using. I don't do all the construction myself, but I do like to do a lot of projects on the houses, home theaters, or this last house I did put some radiant heating in it, or building countertops. I do some of the things that I can for sure do myself, but the skills I learned growing up in the shop, understanding how things should be put together, with just some of that basic knowledge. I mean, again, I love thinking about how the connections between building homes and tennis. We talk about foundations. So many of the same concepts through all the different things. You're building a car, and you got to build a good foundation and put things put together everything the right way, the right order. Take your time, be patient. Same thing with building homes. Same thing with building tennis players. So many parallels to all of it. So I really like being able to take all those and putting it together. But it's my wife and I have actually been building a house right now. It's turned into a fun project with the pandemic, but we're actually building an A-frame house, which is very uncommon nowadays. You saw more of them in the past, but the whole idea for us was we wanted to build a house that was going to be efficient. It wasn't going to waste a lot of energy. So it's a lot of tie-ins together with all that.
Only thing I know about building a house is the word foundation and the story of the 3 little pigs.
Great one.
I tell kids it all the time. Come on, the wolf is going to huff and puff, and you got to take some time. Here's one. Bill McKenzie. He was in charge of Dennis Vandermeer's sales, and he came to Tyler Junior College tennis tech program many years ago. He wrote a manual for the PTR. Be in charge of Dennis Vandermeer's sales. I've learned so much from Bill McKenzie. But he used to say there's two types of people: builders and maintainers. And it's very, very difficult to build a tennis player. And, there's so many frustrations, distractions, obstacles. And a lot of it's just the human element. It's like, okay, let's just show you how to do this. Just follow directions.
If you were to talk kind of construction lingo and building a house, and you were to compare that to how most junior players and parents approach building a tennis game, it's almost like they're buying the really expensive furniture before they even have a foundation up. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and there's that, and then there's people want it to be done now. I'm a builder / owner of the house that I'm building right now, and so I can see both sides of it. I want the house to be done really well. I want to be finished yesterday or last year. At the same time, that there's it's so many parallels. I think more on the contractor side. I think about in pretty deep, pretty quick. But like for me, the toughest thing right now is dealing with independent contractors doing things well. I'm not doing everything myself, and so having someone come out and that are rushing and trying to finish things and get paid for it too quick, which then I think about the tennis industry, and there's so many coaches that are just rushing the product, trying to make it look good enough, and you win a couple of tournaments and then send everybody on their way, and consumer beware kind of thing. The person doesn't even know before it's too late that they didn't build a solid foundation, that they didn't put the plumbing in right, that the electrical wasn't put in there the right way. It's so many parallels on that side, and then that's checking the checkpoints. Is the inspection done the correct way? It's a lot to go into, and then the joke I would tell people about my background in drag racing, and I would say the thing with cars and humans are different. It seems like the cars have a brain, but they really don't. With humans, they have a brain. There's so many dynamics with that when you start getting into mindset and all the variables that go into it. So, but to Steve's point, you're talking about earlier, tuning and with cars and players, when you really work with a player, you can help create self-awareness and create a good game and fundamentals and athleticism. It's like having an F1 race car. You can make little tweaks and make a massive change in how the car performs. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch that. Taking a player to a tournament and just they struggle, and then you make 2 or 3 little tiny changes, and boom, something opens up.
I really like the movie Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah,
Is that the title?
Yeah. Christian Bale.
Ford. Is it Found on Road Dead or First on Race Day? Which one is it?
First on Race Day.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was a kid, very young, my grandfather Mikhail, Utica, New York, it was a national, I think it was called Soapbox Derby.
Yeah.
Where you had to build a car, had no engine, you just went down a hill or whatever. And I
tried that.
I remember my grandfather. It was very impressive, but it was a big deal for he loved it. Just what these kids built. I mean, again, I was just a kid, but I remember it. It was so impressive.
Yeah, I think my visual was I believe it's Little Rascals, the movie Little Rascals. That there was something like that on. I could be wrong, but I remember me and a good friend Ryan Norman trying to build one in my dad's shop, and but it was wood. It wasn't the typical stuff that I was used to working on. I mean, we were 10 years old. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I remember we worked on it all weekend long, and then tried to get it to work, and it just fell apart. And it was not successful.
I think the only thing I've been a superstar at is I was a superstar at Lincoln Logs.
Oh yeah,
it's kind of like they came before Tinker Toys, or then Legos. But because I
grew up on Lincoln Logs.
I was a kid who could just play with one toy over and over and over again. But yeah,
my grandma's house, that's what she had. She had like a bag of Lincoln Logs and a couple of other toys. But most of the time I was ever hanging out at my grandma's house, that's what I was doing. was spending time on Lincoln Logs. My wife actually has a picture of we were at a resort called Big Cedar. It's not too far where we are, and I passed by a set of Lincoln Logs one day and sat down, and an hour and a half later they're off having lunch or whatever it is, and I'm still playing with the Lincoln Logs at 32 years old.
Well, I don't know if I ever built anything but a tennis player. I remember sixth grade science. My motor never worked. We had to build a motor. I wasn't the only one who failed, but I just couldn't get it to go. Tell us, you're based in Arkansas, but where do you work? Listeners, I think they would find interest in that.
Yeah, so we live northwest Arkansas in the Bentonville-Rogers area, and the big thing around here is the Walmart world headquarters. And so, I actually work at the it's called the Walton Life Fitness Center, which is the fitness center for the associates for Walmart.
And how many tennis courts do you guys have there?
We have 6 indoor courts. One has been converted to a mostly pickleball court. They still have it, or it's you could use it as a tennis court, but 6 indoor, and then same thing on the outside. We've got 5 outdoor courts and a mixed-use pickleball tennis court. Beautiful facility. It's one of the nicest facilities in the state with the indoor and the outdoor courts.
No, I was impressed. I was fortunate to, have you take me on a tour. Very immaculate, very clean, well organized. But it's actually being replaced, correct?
It is, yeah. So that's one of the big projects going on in the area. Is Walmart 10 years ago decided they were going to build a new headquarters here because their facilities were pretty outdated as far as the home office and other things. So they're trying to attract new talent to the area, and so they bought up nearly 300 acres in the middle of town, and they're building a beautiful campus, which is going to incorporate a lot of bike trails and the new new facility fitness center. I mean, they're going to be building the whole thing, tearing everything down they have right now. New gym, new basketball courts, tennis courts, racquetball, all that stuff. They're going to put everything. Right now, we actually have 2 separate buildings. We have the main gym, basketball side, and then swimming pools, and then we have a tennis center. And they're on in the same area, but they're separated right now. So it's going to be super nice because they're going to put everything together. So we're excited just with the kids and everything, the program that we have. We be able to have something that's a little bit more accessible, not have to tote around 20 kids, through a parking lot and different areas. It's going to be beautiful. And, I know they're doing it. They're doing it right. The whole campus is going to be extremely beautiful.
Well, that whole area is one of the nicest places in the United States to live. Mountain biking capital, is that right? Or
yeah, they're coining it the mountain biking capital of the world, and they're there.
Tell us a little bit more about your official roles and responsibilities at the fitness center.
Yeah, so at the fitness center, I'm actually an independent contractor. We have a director. His name's Dave. He's been there the entire time that I've been there. And then we have an assistant director, Lisa Frank, that works there. But myself, I'm an independent contractor. We have a lot of programs. Sam Walton was a big tennis guy, which I think is part of the reason why we have such a nice tennis facility. Supposedly, Sam had a tennis court at his house that he played tennis all around the world, but had, I think I heard someone say, 7 layers of cushion on it, or rubber. One of the softest courts where he could play so much longer than most of the places that he went.
I'm sorry, the director, what's Dave's last name? I was introduced
Dave
to
Smith.
Oh, there you
Dave
go.
Smith.
There you go.
Yep.
Long lost cousins.
Well, that means he's never sinned. At one point, everybody's name's Smith. He had the silversmith, blacksmith, goldsmith, and then as each person sinned, their name was changed. So the moral of the story is, if your name is Smith, you haven't sinned.
No, we know that's not true about you, Steve. So
that's a lie. So the pretty common name. And tell us, Marla, what does your wife do?
Yeah, Marla is a speech language pathologist. So I don't know how familiar to me people are with that, but actually, Kyle LaCroix that you had on a while back, his wife as well. I remember him mentioning that she was a speech language pathologist, but yeah, she works here in town at a clinic, and yeah, she does an amazing job. She's worked her way through. She started at public schools here in the area, and then yeah, now she's doing some marketing roles for the clinic that she's at, leadership roles, and it's
there must be some similarities with what she does. Is I just think of the word repetition. You must have some conversations where there's some things you do repeating over and over again, and she probably has some of the same applications, same tactics that she has to do to help someone out.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much. I'm so fortunate because we have so many good conversations. She'll listen to a podcast and come back and be something on the brain or some kind of developmental type thing, and I'll have certain things, mindset. We talk about growth mindset, fixed mindset type stuff. She's actually been working with some kids that are in athletics, and it's cool to hear her be able to take some of the things that we've talked about in the past and be able to apply it to them and be able to speak that language. But no, absolutely. There's so many different things. I'm very fortunate that, she has a career that parallels mine in so many ways, and we can bounce things off of each other.
So she listens to the podcast.
Yeah, whether she realizes it or wants to or not.
That might sometimes.
The podcast, and she's probably watched Tennis Intelligence Applied as many times as I have.
I was going to ask her. She was the one who complained about the music. How'd that go? How'd that music in the beginning go?
Yeah, she had to sing it.
I think Chad Berry will pick that music out. We're going to talk to Chad one of these days on this podcast. But yeah, that if people go to our website and listen to Tennis Intelligence Applied, I believe that they don't have to listen to that intro music on that.
Good job, Andy.
Yeah, shout out to Andy for sure.
Yeah, Andy deserves a pat on the back for that one.
Andy Fitzell. Tell us about your connection to the GreatBase.
Yeah, so the story goes, I've been teaching since 2006, and I've been teaching for about 5 years, and someone had given me the book, the Talent Code, and I really fell in love with it. There's only so many books that I've actually read beginning to end, and that was one of them that I picked up, couldn't put down, read it multiple times, but I got really into the idea of hotbeds and how being here in Arkansas, I made the decision a long time ago that I was going to try to keep my roots here in Arkansas and stay and develop the game here. And so how do we think outside the box? How do we create something that is not typical? And so after reading that book, just started diving into information and trying to look online and find where are hotbeds, where are places around the world that are really doing a good job with tennis. The book Talent Code mentions the Spartak, or I can't remember how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
But then, looking for information, and I was always on YouTube, and I remember stumbling across your videos and starting to apply the information. I would pick and choose different videos. I like this information. I like that information. And still had things that I was trying to do. I felt like I was trying to develop my own system of the type of tennis player I wanted to develop. And just slowly over the years, I've been following it now for 11 years, online. And, we've had some interaction. We've worked some camps and been around each other a few times at this point. But probably, I think it was the first 5 years, it was just strictly for me following the online content, learning the information, watching the Tennis Intelligence Applied and the GreatBase videos. Just slowly implementing the information. And then finally, I realized along the way that I just needed to go all in, that everything that I saw on there was everything that I needed as far as developing players from a technical, tactical standpoint. It was all there. All the information was there. There were so many different things that we had to do here to, build up our groups. And for me personally, just developing leadership skills that I was going to have to look in other places. But as far as the tennis information, it was all there. And then we talked about the story last week, but again, it's one of my most vivid memories was meeting you for the first time around 2015 in Cary, North Carolina, and walking through the door and just being blown away by the group dynamics and seeing all the kids in the system spread out over, multiple courts, working with each other, not having tons of coaches around, and just working so well with each other because they're all speaking the same language, they're doing the same thing, and it just being beautiful to watch. Told the story of Sofia Patel working with a walk-on at NC State. Sofia Patel, at the time she was probably a 15, 16-year-old girl working with a guy that's 6'4" and really being able to explain the information well to him. And then Colin, somewhat being in the system, coming in and doing the tiebreaker test and getting filmed and then getting information from that for us, and going out and watching Victor and Rohan and Arush play, and the different stages of development all of them were in. When that happened for me, I was just 100% bought in, and I knew at that point I had to figure out how to implement that stuff more and more in our area.
With some of these juniors you mentioned, players, Sofia Patel, she's on the UNC tennis team. I mean, that's their number one team in the country. To be on the team, have a scholarship. But who you're referring to is a young guy by Michael Ogden, really good athlete. And I was working with a young German player, Marvin Boker, who had ranked very high at a young age. And I remember Michael Ogden's father just watching him volley, said, "My son can't volley like that." And he was a big, strong athlete, just bang balls out of the backhand corner, and moving to his left, hitting forehands. But yeah, that's a great example. So at that time, Sofia was 14, 15, and she went on to UNC. But Michael was a walk-on at NC State. But he was towards the end of his high school, I do think it's not used so much anymore, but he was a 3-star tennis player. Maybe he squeaked in and he bounced back from 4 to 3. But, he played some singles in the lineup, and he ended up playing doubles. That's a Power 5 conference. We can talk more about Collins Matthews. When I first met you, you brought him, and I could tell right away that you were following the content. And it's great to know that people have just come across the content by looking at it online. It's all free. I do think with Facebook or Instagram, some of the other platforms. I just heard a couple of days ago from a coach from Denmark, and I haven't talked to him yet. But he's been following the content for some time and listening to podcasts, and it works. It works. I mean, but I think people through these podcasts, if they went back to the very beginning, who the pillars are, and Vic Braden with science, or you're talking about Dennis Vandermeer with group dynamics, and certainly you learn from everybody. In that course, Tennis Intelligence Applied, there's over 100 coaches that are mentioned, and we do say we have 8 pillars. I think of Jack Rappo, who was one of our guests, leading biomechanist, made major contributions to tennis. But Jack and I were pretty much spoon-fed by Braden, so I put that, Jack's work really under Vic, and who was a self-made biomechanist. Mike McLaughlin, who was on a couple weeks ago, I got a text from him today or email, and he's organized it. We're going to have Gideon Ariel on as a guest, who was Vic's partner. Who was, I think after Stanley Paganoff, he was probably the second biomechanist who was recognized. But yeah, all those first names, we'll get to talking about the different experiences where with Colin Matthews. I remember doing a project for Tennis Memphis, a nonprofit, and second weekend I was there, I said, okay, this is what we need to do is, and you and others, Dee Cook from Mississippi. So we had kids come in. All you need to do is get an air mattress and a sleeping bag, and it's the easiest way to supervise boys and girls. Like when they go to a camp and they're in a dorm, they shut the door. You don't know what's going on, especially today with cell phones. But so yeah, the girls go to the right, the boys go to the left. Ideally, no pillows. And you can actually just buy an air mattress for $10, buy a sleeping bag for $10, and at the end of the camp, just donate them to Goodwill. But I remember you coming in to do that. So there's been many visits with Brandon. Go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, when you kind of first met Steve in NC State, as you're kind of watching these practices, is there anything in particular that stood out from a group dynamic standpoint that was different from what you'd seen in coaching tennis up to that point?
Yeah, again, the Sofia thing was just so vivid for a couple of reasons. I mean, you got a young girl working with a college level player, Mel, and then our program has shifted a lot into having females. So I tell that story to them a whole lot. And we want to have a program that can mimic something like that. But humility. We talked a little bit about empathy last year, but humility. For males, information doesn't matter where you're getting it. Are you getting good information? And then, again, we walked outside, and I remember also watching the court. There's 3 or 4 girls they're going through doing serve drills, and it just, Steve's on the outside. This is a little while after getting there. Steve was on the outside watching match play, and I was just hovering around. These 3 or 4 girls are on the inside doing serve drills. They're going forward, 3 serves moving in, and they're keeping their head perfectly still at the head and hitting the ball clean, and they're talking a little bit, but at the same time, they're doing really good work. And it's just, again, the system, the information is there, but also, character development also. It's just, it hit, they have been taught how to work by themselves, be efficient, be smart, hold themselves accountable for what they're doing. And then again, going outside and seeing the level of play across the board. I mentioned Victor and Rohan and AJ Patel and Arush and all these kids that have turned out to be really solid tennis players, but watching them do drills and work together and, hey, let's do some mini tennis 1 and everybody knowing what to do. The system, the language, the lingo, so important, but how that can impact a big group. And then even monitoring that. I met Chris Floor while I was there. And Matt, I think, was out of town at the time, but, it's amazing. One of the things that I like about the GreatBase is just so good with it is the network that we have. And even though I haven't met Matt personally face to face at this point, is working with a player, Alanis Hamilton and Inya Hamilton, that I spent time with, and he worked with Colin a little bit as well. But just knowing that all the coaches are speaking the same language, but following that NC State program after I'd been there and seeing those players, tracking those players over years and seeing them in draws and some of our players running into them at tournaments. It was just constant reinforcement, constant reminders that the information's working, the network's there, the system's there, it's all connected. And it just works.
I do think, I tell people this, that actually the content should be more of greater significance, more powerful than actually visiting, but especially for juniors when they visit, that bricks and mortar experience. Then we say go back and look at the videos. I remember Mike Larscheid, somebody that we've trained, he said, now that you've been here, the videos will just jump out at you. But I know you went down to Dallas, Dave Anderson's facility. He doesn't own it, but if the flagship for Club Corp, Brookhaven. You mentioned Victor. It's Victor Lilov. He's getting close to the point where he could be playing tennis for money. I mean, he is playing tennis for money. He was a pro event in Dominican Republic, and the Andy Fitzell watched. He was playing Martin Dom, and what's still part of what his training was for 5 years, and what's not, and positive, negative. But like someone like yourself would know, like Ashton Kruger, who won a national title in the 18s not too long ago, and on Facebook we put film where Dave Anderson's working with in those key years. And a lot of people don't really know that, but I do think that yourself, I think one thing that really helps you out is your 16 years in tennis teaching, that you pretty much have been doing your own thing, correct? I mean, you tell us, okay, maybe you were an assistant for a while, but we've trained so many people over the years that even when we trained people for 2 years, and when they would leave, they'd have this education, but their experience wouldn't match the education. They didn't have working for someone. But no, I do think Brandon and I just today, he's on the fly, I'm on the fly. And, finally he had a lesson rained out, so we talk for a little bit, and we still need to finalize a way to set up a training program here with the setup he has in Boynton Beach to have people be able to come down. Whether we do have people come, they bring coaches, bring small groups. We had 50 plus people here a couple weekends ago, but I think that hands-on and actually seeing it. But there are all the connections with. We've had a girl here from upstate New York is really improving leaps and bounds, but it's just the work ethic, and start the course and stay the course. But it just worked out where I was in the Orlando area and relocating, and because of that, she went to work with Chris Clore, and for two months just did technical work, and especially when you have to go backwards to go forwards. And I do think that just static balance alone, getting a player to stand in one place. Welby Van Horn used to stand right next to the student, and I mean, there's an art just to dropping the ball for the student, and he'd be so upset if someone was feeding to a beginning player, like Braden would just feather the ball with that rapid fire feeding style. Vic was a little easier going than Welby, but this is how you feed the ball to a beginner. And I think those two gentlemen, they would just cringe if they were to see how tennis is being taught. But go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I think coming back to the group dynamics, I think one of my favorite lines that I learned from Steve over the years is the little things become the big things. Or with my New York Jets mug here, as bad of a team as they are. Herman Edwards, one of my favorite coaches from years ago. You play to win the game, but he did write a book, and one of the main themes from the book, his father was a military man, and his father's theme was you have to sweep the corners. And I think the little things become the big things. One of the group dynamic, I hate to call them tricks, but one of the group dynamic pieces of I think what you'll see in the program that Steve runs, and in many cases the programs that are run by coaches that he's trained, is how players pick up the balls. And I think that's pretty unique, and I think it's something I've kind of immersed myself more in the recreational side of the game, club tennis and recreational tennis. But I still tell those players that the most important part of the practice is when you pick up the balls, how you pick up the balls. And do you remember that, kind of seeing that? Was a first-time occurrence for you in terms of the type of ball pickup? I know when I was first learning, it's kind of like the old, when I was a kid, I used to walk to school uphill both ways, but we used to have to do 2 and 2. I think he now does 3 and 3, and pretty soon it'll be 4 and 4. But was there any kind of recollection of that at all? I think that's kind of a pretty unique thing as well.
No, absolutely. I saw that, and I remember him, having a conversation with the players about running and what's the difference between running and jogging, and it's that's funny. It's funny because that's one of the talking points between me and the other coaches in our program is, which direction, with that is, no ball pyramids. And I think in tennis intelligence applied video, there's a few times where he references, goal-oriented players don't build ball pyramids on their rackets. But yeah, it's, I remember, talking about Colin, going back to him, there was times there for a while where I was trying to mimic what I saw with Steve, and probably was just me and Colin out on the court, and I just giving him a private with 365 balls, and they're all spread out, and they're all right, let's go, and watching me yelling at him, running, picking up balls, and the dude, was such a hard worker. He'd get him, he'd be sweating profusely, but we've gone through different stages, and sometimes we get a little impatient with the kids, and we let's just go grab some hoppers. We'll do that, and one of those things. We've got more of an after-school program right now. We have some kids that are definitely trying to strive and have bigger goals, but trying to let them find their way and understand. And it's funny that circling back to that conversation, but how you pick up balls. I definitely agree. The little things statement is so true. They definitely turn into bigger things. That's one of the reasons why we're so adamant on getting foundations and everything right with the kids.
picking up balls, I tell people that's where you really show your character. Show your character. So many kids, I have to go to the bathroom now.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the ball starts to be picked up, run like an Olympian. Certainly how you talk to. I was on a Zoom call last night with a tennis club, parents and juniors. How you talk to a kid. Do you want to go to I Stink You? Where it's like they all say, I want to go D1. I want to go to. Actually, when kids fill out a form at the national tournaments, they generally just write down Stanford, Duke. They just write down 3 schools you'd like to go to. Sometimes they're hard pressed to name a third school.
I saw a documentary one time. Again, shuffling through YouTube and watching these coaches. I don't even know who the coach was, but I watched it over and over. I think it was titled "The Coach," and it's this guy working privately with this kid. And, it's very short. It's maybe a minute long, but he's encouraging him. Come on, get quick to the ball, go, go, go. But at the very end of the video, I always remember there's a line where this guy's walking around and he yells to the players that the best players in the world are the best ball picker uppers. And think about it, yeah, it's so true. I mean, they probably picked up the most balls out of anybody.
No, I can remember being in the 6th grade watching Sam Volo run a high school football practice. A player by the name of Buzzy Ballway, he'd blow a whistle and just sprint in. The great receiver, Jerry Rice. I think he went to Southern Mississippi, and the coach.
Brady won.
Yeah, even at the NFL level, they laughed at him. San Francisco 49ers, but he for a down and out pass, and he just turned and sprint to the end zone. Every time he would catch a ball in practice, he just turn and sprint to the end zone. Certainly, you get into stories, in the summertime so they could. His father was a mason. They'd put him on the roof and they'd throw bricks to him, get the jobs done faster, be able to make a little more money.
You can catch a brick, you can catch a ball.
Yeah, a little pressure being on a roof. You could lose your concentration, fall off the roof. Tell us a little bit about Walmart. I've got some notes on Arkansas. Tell us a little about Walmart.
Yeah, no, it's our area for sure is entrenched in all that stuff. You either work for Walmart or you work for Walmart in our area. We've got tons of suppliers in the area. In 2005, they started requiring everybody that worked supplier-wise that worked for Walmart have to have an office here. So it really caused the area to blow up. And the Walton family's done an amazing job of putting a lot of resources into our area and growing the area. But Walmart, I mean, I didn't know near as much about it growing up. It was just a store we hung out on Friday and Saturday nights in the small town I lived in. But up here in our area, it's everything. Being one of the biggest companies in the world, we got there's tons of stores in all kinds of countries that people don't even realize they're associated with Walmart. They go in and they bought up numerous grocery chains, different countries, but have tons of international stores. My wife's father actually worked for Walmart for 32 years for one of the first international stores. He's got a lot of great stories, meeting Sam and a lot of the original Bud and a lot of the original family that got the stores going. But yeah, they've got started as a 5 and dime. And if I'm correct, I believe it actually started a different part of Arkansas, but eventually came back to this area. And I believe maybe it was back in the 70s that it started. They have a museum here in town. It's called the 5 and Dime. You can go through and you can tour and you can see all the different stages that it's gone through. But they've just been constantly growing and growing. Also Sam's Club, being a part of Walmart, one of their different chains, I guess you can say. But it's as far as I've seen, it's a great company. The slogan for them is save money, live better. They're always trying to figure out ways how to cut costs to pass that on to the consumer.
I think building a car, building a house, building a business, I think it's all the same. Yesterday I was talking to a businessman, and he has 54 franchises. And, basically in the end, it took me 20 years. It's just a story of struggle. Every day you get up and you just keep chipping away at it. With that, I think it's so important for tennis players to really understand it is a process. You love the process will love you back. We'll come back to Walmart. I got my notes, but with I think this is so admirable. I think the listeners would find value in this. That you want to stay in Arkansas. I know when you were at Dave Anderson's place. Within the first 5 minutes, he asked you to, hey, do you want to work here? Because I mean, he could just sense your passion, and he has 20, 25 pros. But I think that's very admirable. Tell us about some of the hardships where, how far you have to travel within the 9 states in the southern section?
Oh, I can't remember exactly. Start going through. So yeah, we're in the southern section, which is geographically one of the biggest sections there is, and where we live is in the furthest northwest corner of that. So being in Arkansas, and then it's Louisiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. It's a huge chunk in that southeast section. And so where we're at, when we start talking about going to tournaments, if we're playing out of our section, Little Rock is 3.5 hours. And then outside of that, then you got Memphis, 5 hours. The Texarkana, Shreveport area, 5 to 6 hours. And then after that, Jackson, Mississippi, 7.5 hours. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 10 hours. The first time I met you in North Carolina, I drove, and it was one way, 17 hours to Cary, North Carolina to play the 12 summer sectional closed tournament. So 17 hours one way, 17 hours back. It's quite a haul. It makes it very difficult for people to get out and play tournaments. And although we've had conversations over the years, I mean, tournaments are not necessary as far as people developing. They're definitely, they play a role in the formula of getting people to have awareness and understanding of where they sit in the game. There's been some huge tools that have come out. UTR has been a great tool as far as getting people to understand, okay, you're at this level and you want to play at this level. Okay, this is what those players are doing. But Northwest Arkansas, there's positive things about it. The area is growing and there's more programs, but as a whole, the state has struggled with developing tennis players consistently. To me, it has a lot to do with the geography and us being in that section. The USTA did throw us a little bit of a bone the last couple of years in the new structure and us being able to go and play outside. Actually, for years, it was crazy. Oklahoma was completely closed to us playing any tournament in Oklahoma, even just like a basic local level tournament, which was so frustrating. But in the past, players could go to these tournaments, experience, but not get any points. Now with the USTA structure, the national structure, we can at least go and get a couple of tournaments for kids in the 12s and 3 tournaments for kids in the 14s through 18s that count towards their ranking. So that's been a help for sure. But the tournament side of things and the cost that it has been required for people in our area to go play tournaments has really, to me, hurt the development and growth of our area as far as developing players at a higher level.
I think with the UTR, it could come back to having tournaments be genderless and ageless. I always tell people it's very, very difficult for young girls because older players don't want to play younger players and boys don't want to play girls. Older players don't want to lose the younger players. Boys don't want to lose the girls. But if people would just have the attitude, how's it go? Anybody, anytime, anywhere.
Yeah.
Play everybody. But no, there's so many variables, and being in a place, obviously it's remote. You're a long ways away from the hotbeds. It's not, to me, it's more a numbers game. It's not that the tennis is, it's not that there's better instruction in Miami or LA or Barcelona, wherever. It's just that there's more of it.
Right.
I think coming back to the book, The Talent Code, the Spartak Tennis Club with one indoor court in Moscow, having more top 20 players than the whole entire United States combined. I think there's possibly, you can talk about the negatives all day long, but I think possibly there's more positives to your situation than, say, being in South Florida. I think of the, just like we talked about last time, having a facility in which it's only open to to associates of Walmart, creates a different atmosphere and vibe, and that theory of isolation might actually work to your benefit, and probably hopefully you see that as well. I'm sure you do, but that's something that could potentially continue to help you down the road in developing your own hotbed in Arkansas.
Well, I do think certainly to reach out to the university, to throughout the state, to get people involved, educating parents, having people. I mean, the UST, I think, really could be state by state, section by section. I think it would have been better to just put money into education than building 100 tennis courts in one zip code. But the term pre-academy, the consumer, the tennis parent, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. They don't really know that their child doesn't need to be at a so-called academy. I like to, Ryder and Hart years ago called our place the anti-academy, because we would have, some kid would come in, he could be top 10 in the section. We'd study his game for 2 days, and he's there for a month, and he really doesn't play the rest of the time he's there, because he's got to learn how to volley or learn how to serve. And but tell us your thoughts on eliminating the pro. That is something that ties into all this.
Yeah. Let me jump back just real quick and unpack a couple of those things. I mean, Steve, you mentioned Brookhaven, Dave Anderson, and I remember one of the first experiences down there with him, walking in. It was Saturday morning, and it's 8 a.m. and you and Dave are on a court talking, and you're about to start your camp up, and there's some juniors down playing with people of different ages. And I looked at Dave and I said, "Is this like a mentoring program you guys have going on or something?" And he looked at me and just said, "Tennis is tennis, and people just come out here and play." And that's one thing that really stuck with me. And I started some UTR tournaments in the area, and you mentioned that, and it's just tragic that UTR is heading the wrong direction fast. The principle and the idea of the ranking system is great, and even though it's thrown a lot of people off, for me personally, looking at it, it's great education to getting people to understand where you're at. You're 4 and you want to go play a tournament that there's 8s and 9s, like you're out of your league. You got to understand there's certain things to work on. But we actually use that little line, "Tennis is tennis," as a slogan for some of the tournaments that we ran here. And boys playing girls, different ages, adults playing kids. That was something that our area really needs to embrace, because demographically we don't have a big enough situation where we can fill a 32 draw of 12-year-old players, boys, girls, whatever it might be. And it's even more tragic that one thing that kind of miffed me this week, and looking at a little junior tournament starting this weekend, and so many people are just not playing it, and they're like traveling to go play bigger tournaments instead of playing the local tournaments. Well, if all the kids that are 16-year-old girls would play the local tournaments here, we would have a solid little draw. It would be decent, but usually people want to play up. They want to go to bigger tournaments and play the quote-unquote better players to help their quote-unquote UTR, and just dodging things and avoiding it. To Brandon's point about, it's a blessing in disguise, really, in a lot of ways. The isolation here. That's what I started to try to embrace, is that, we are on an island, and, really, okay, can we just help our parents here understand the information of, we need to work on this, we need to work on that, skills-wise, athletically, mentally. Play practice matches before you go play tournaments. Can you do well in a practice match? If you can't do it well there, good luck trying to play in a tournament. There are a few things here and there in a tournament where adrenaline will get the memory flowing and things, and you pull it out and you play better. But overall, if you can't do it in practice, if you can't hit a target 10 out of 10 times, if you can't do it in a practice set, it's not going to show up in a tournament that often.
No, I'm glad you mentioned targets. Going back to Spartak, I was at the Florida Atlantic University track tonight, and Natalia Sorkin, who she's been a guest on our podcast. She's here with her husband, her family. Actually, her husband, I'm going to guess he's lost 35 pounds. I think he just ran a half marathon at 6:02 a mile.
Wow.
Not a marathon. I might be wrong. Maybe it was a marathon at 6:02 a mile, but he's getting better in leaps and bounds. And but you get the stopwatch out. Bruce Dern, the actor, you can't be as a stopwatch. When you feed target tennis, When the NTRP came out in the 70s, there was an outfit called TNT, Tennis and Targets, and you would just feed 100 shots, and then you would rate someone according to that. Coming back to just that word rating, the UTR should be you're a 4 or you're a 5, not a 4.1 and a 4.2. Once you do that, it's a ranking. But no, the measurement. But I do think the mystique of, someone's in Arkansas, and okay, now they're going to play somebody from Florida, California in this country. They're down a set before it even starts because of the off factor. If you're in awe of someone, you have the off factor. If you think someone's awesome, you'll never do what they do. It's like in Canada. I grew up 10 miles from Canada, and it's a numbers game. There's, the Canadians, they can put together 4 world-class teams when it comes down to the World Cup or the Olympics. They have so much depth, but there's a lot of lousy hockey players in Canada. There's just so many of them. There's a lot of lousy tennis players in Florida, a lot of lousy tennis teachers in Florida, but there's just so many of them. It's really very, very much a saturated market. But no, the eliminating of a pro, that doesn't mean you want to put pros out of work, but just some thoughts on that. Why don't you elaborate upon that?
Yeah, we had the conversation when we were working that camp in Cincinnati once upon a time. I think we were just talking about, I was telling you, for me, how good the GreatBase had been as far as teaching me the information and putting it out there, and that, parents should be able to get on there. If you want your kid to be a solid tennis player, just follow the information. And so we kind of, talked about, I mentioned the idea that it should really virtually be able to eliminate the pro. And, the industry is, all sports industries have just gotten way out of hand. You go back just in the 80s, I know that volunteers is starting up, and that was really kind of the lead into a lot of these academies in all sports around the world. But, for me growing up, 80s, 90s, there wasn't this kind of industry as far as sports. You went and you played your local leagues and you worked your way up. And nowadays it's really a battle of who has the most money, and what families can take their kids to the most camps or do the most drills or hire the private coaches. But the beautiful thing with YouTube and the internet, as bad as it is, we'll talk about information going out so fast, bad information going out so fast. There's a lot of good information. People understand how to filter through it. And, we're trying to develop a culture in our program. We've got the system with a GreatBase that we're implementing. We have all these kids that have been with us for years and years and years. And just today, it was beautiful. We had multiple courts going on where we had older kids mentoring younger kids and helping them out and learning the system. And we try to preach one of the ultimate goals of the program is if I'm not here tomorrow, if Caleb's not here tomorrow with our program, the coaches, can the kids continue it? And they could. Absolutely. We've got another kid, Yvonne, who you met, and we were having a conversation today about he's an Indian kid. He's been working with other kids in his community, and they have one kid that is really, out of the 3 or 4 kids that he's taken out and shown the drills, he's taken a liking to it, and he's trying to copy and do the things he's doing. He's playing the tournament this weekend. So it's on Yvonne, man, what a cool story will that be when you guys are at a tournament and he's doing well and the parents of the other player come up and ask him, who's your coach? And then he points to you over on another court. He says, that kid. And then they say, hey, really, seriously, who's your coach? And it's like, that kid. That's the kid that's been teaching me. Because I've been watching, go out. He does, take the hopper out and he takes, the kids and he shows them drop hits and makes corrections and shows them how to shadow. And that's really what sports need to get back to, is a whole lot more, learning the kids feeding off each other. I can't remember if it's talent code or culture code, but one of the stories was about skate parks and how skating started back in the 70s with old deserted pools in California. And there was some guy that had like a skate shop, maybe it was a surf shop, but all these kids would go and just hang out. But that was the hub, and people walk through there and talk about the tricks that were done that day and how cool. And so then other kids would go out and try to mimic that stuff or try to copy it and do better and just one up each other. And that's the skating culture. As far as I know, I'm sure skating's got into where there's more private coaches, this and that. I think it's inevitable. But at the same time, I do know, I follow a few people who are professional skateboarders on Instagram, and I see a whole lot of that whole idea where they're just bringing the young kids into their skate park, and they're just showing them things, and they're just hanging out, and they're really giving them good energy and good vibes. And it's like that. It's got to be, talk about programmed out type situation.
With
go
ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, the comparison to skateboarding. I think for whatever reason, tennis just has this culture that's just become extremely selfish. And whatever way we can help young people, and then, of course, the parents are involved and the coaches are involved, all in that same vicious cycle of creating this culture that's more self-centered. Whatever we can do to try to improve that culture, I think that should be one of the primary missions of certainly a lot more tennis coaches.
It's like the private lesson. We had that discussion last week on episode 81 with a private lesson is probably one of the worst business moves in all of anything industry or whatnot. It's just you take 7,500 square feet and you put two people in there. It's such a bad business model. And then you get on Tennis Sales Applied and you look at the videos on group dynamics, and you have kids over in the corner doing cone work and shadowing, and you have kids over here doing agility, and you have kids over here. And I think I told you guys I went to a volleyball tournament with, to be honest, it was a player that we worked with for many years, and she got into volleyball through her high school. Her high school doesn't have tennis because it's a small, just started a few years ago. And she got into volleyball, and she really liked it. And so she's been doing travel volleyball and all that. And I went to a meet to watch her, support her. And as soon as I walked in there, I actually paid $9 because I was missing $1, but it was $10 to get in the door and walk in. And there's 6 different volleyball courts all spread out. And there's probably 300 people that are around watching, because in one little area that's the size of a tennis court, you've got, I don't even know how many kids are out playing volleyball at the time, but let's say that, there's 8 and then you 16, and then you got coaches and 3 players on the bench. All of a sudden you're at 25 players that are just participating in the game. And then you've got all the parents and everybody that's watching, and they're spread out around. So you've got, say, 50 people at least in this small little area watching it. So comparative to a tennis match where, at a tournament this weekend, there'll be singles going on with 2 kids and 2 sets of parents and maybe a couple of spectators. So you might have 10 people at most. And there's just so much more energy to that. And people want to be around other people. And again, it's crazy. I was laughing to some of our kids. I was telling them that story, and I was like, can you imagine going to our tennis tournament, paying $10? People come in paying $10 to watch you guys play a singles match. It's just such a different dynamic. But tennis.
I'm sorry to interrupt. With, say, a practice court, it'd be easier to do it indoors because of the elements. But you just have standing equipment, portable backboards, eye coaches, the Billie Jean King eye coach, just tennis teaching aids. And you go there and practice. I know Bill Tim used to be very clever and say, well, if you want a lesson with me, you got to take 2 lessons with assistants. You have to do these things in practice, submit these practice cards before you can have another lesson with me. Mentioning just being at the track, the kids ran 12 400s. And a great mom, great person. She's asked to meet with me just to help out. And but if you could have kids stop, how many times am I on a court where there's not a paid professional? How many times am I not being supervised? It's just 2 kids. I know there's a safety factor, but we live by a park, walking distance, 16 lighted, 3-wall racquetball courts. You never have to get off the sidewalk to get there. And the kids know a small group that we have here from here, there, and everywhere. But again, just a small group. They know it's Podcast Tuesday. And one of the moms said, hey, can I take the kids out to dinner? And instead of going out to dinner, they should just be, okay, let's have some healthy sandwiches and then go to the backboard, and we'll have a 3rd, 4th practice. They got to get their homework done. Someone who Brandon trained with, a gal by the name of Liberty Svecki, she played at Vanderbilt. She had a lot of injuries, unfortunately, but she became a very good player. She totally changed her game, got to the point where she's ranked 2 in the country. And back in the day, with the mixed doubles at the Eddie Hurry, you just sign up and you'd get a random partner picked out of the hat. So how I
That's
met
beautiful.
Liberty was a Russian coach, Tatiana from Sochi. I should be able to tell your last name. She's very, very well known in Russia. She's a little older than I am. She's been in the game a long, long time. And through her translator, she watched Liberty play, and she told Liberty's father that she should come to Tampa. So here's a girl from living in Sarasota. You should come to Tampa. That's where I was based, and come up and be filmed. And she came up and was filmed. And I said, you can look at the tape, but don't show that to your daughter until after the Orange Bowl. And then what I would recommend is she come here for 6 months and not play a point. And that's what they did. I mean, remember that a dime is smaller than a penny. On the base knuckle of her index finger, you could tell it was heads, not tails, because on the racket we had a dime taped to the racket, and she had to put her base knuckle right where that dime was. But anyway, the Russians, they came and they had these videos made, and there was 4 of them, and they never went to the Orange Bowl, and they practiced at the old Carrollwood Club. It was rebuilt. Brandon was there when he was a young guy, and I just said, okay.
Still am a young guy, Steve. What are you talking about?
Young guy. It's all relative, but I'm glad you got that spirit, that frame of mind. But they never left. I said, well, there's a men's night. There's 17 clay courts here, and pretty much, here are the baskets and balls, and there's only going to be a few times where maybe that you won't be able to use the court, so you can just come and go. And they went, got bologna, and they weren't eating the best, but they got white bread and they got milk, and they did not leave the court. They stayed there from the time it was open to the time the lights went off, and they just rebuilt their games. And that old thing, hungry dog hunts best. But no, I think it's too much when a kid is with a pro all the time. In the peer teaching, I don't think that takes place enough, where the locomotive, the caboose should be the early childhood development. That's where the little kids should be. Too many times, too cool for school. The kids that are in the 16s and 18s in a junior program, they don't even say hello to the little kids. It's really stratified. It's really unfortunate. Go ahead, Brandon.
The talent code would be good to touch on again. I also, one of the books that I've used in the past a lot was the Little Book of Talent, more the kind of the instructional side. I know you mentioned the culture code briefly, but the differences between, of course, hard skills and soft skills, in terms of tennis players getting the repetition for, like Steve was mentioning, the dime on I'm guessing that was bevel number 3.
Yeah.
For Liberty's forehand. The dime on number 3 and working the grip, swing, and body, the hard skills, versus the soft skills of having to play a lot of points and having to be creative, and even the footwork, and of course the tennis ball and research has never bounced the same way twice. Can you talk a little bit more about what you guys do on a daily basis to practice the differences between, say, building hard skills and building soft skills, as far as what you've learned from your own experience, but also just studying the content online?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because it's definitely something that over the past 3-4 years I've tried to get a better understanding of, and trying to figure out a way that, in our own culture of allowing soft skills to happen. I made the mistake for many years where, trying to implement the program and structure and discipline and all that stuff. And it really went against my personality and who I was growing up. Like growing up, I was a goofball and silly, and just always wanted people to laugh. Many years, starting the group dynamic, telling players to be quiet, go stand over here, don't say anything, and hurting personalities in a lot of ways. But we've been trying to do a whole lot more in the last few years, especially because our program is made of mostly girls. And we had mentioned again, talking about before, was empathy skills. And, so many of them are so empathetic, and there's so much power to that. But, being really able to leverage those things, a motherly mindset, empathy skills as far as wanting to help other people. And our girls do such an amazing job of, again, it's a lot of the parents or people that come around the program are blown away with peer teaching, with the kids loving to teach other kids. We have these 2 twins that started with our program not too long ago. And I sat down and had a meeting at school. I actually filmed it. It's like a 30-minute session we were doing our summer camp, and these kids are coming in, and I was explaining, hey, we got these 2 girls coming in. They're 4 years old. They're twins. They're super cute. One's named Lily. One's named Kiki. We're going to make Lily a lefty. We're going to make Kiki a righty. Some of the kids that know them, they got so excited. And then we just started talking about, hey, what are we going to do these first couple of, times out? What are the things that we're going to do to help them develop their game? What are the skills that we need to do? And, the kids are rattling off things perfectly. They need to work on coordination. Let's do some ladder drills. But, it's really beautiful to see that, and then see progression all the way to actually yesterday was the first day where these girls are 5 years old now. They've been with us for close to 6 months, and they came out, and I was testing them out saying, hey, pulled them aside. Okay, we're going to try today having you guys on your own. Can you warm yourself up? Can you spend 15 minutes? I'll put a timer on for 15 minutes. Can you guys do all the skills that all the girls have been teaching you? And, do you need to be, goofy or focused? Okay, focused. But just seeing, everybody connect those dots, and then seeing it's a culmination of the work of all of our other kids are doing. And these girls, I haven't one time coached them, as far as standing on the court and dropping a ball to them and telling them what to do. I just kind of ringlead, just making sure that everything's organized and nobody's burning the building down. But seeing all the soft skills that the girls have learned and the kids that in the program have learned over the years, to be able to have the confidence and the understanding and the knowledge to be able to make that happen on their own. But, again, it's taken many years. I spent all of 16 years, and John Wooden was actually the one I think he used to say is like, it took him 16 years, I believe, to win a national championship. But he said, once I get them, I got it down pretty well. The soft skills is something that took me many years to get to the point of having a system of teaching, to have a program, to having developed enough kids that we can really take our hands off and let those soft skills just take over. Beautiful to watch, though. It's hard to understand for some people what you're looking at. I guess it's part of the reason where the name soft skills come from, but the soft skills are so, talking about little things being big things. There's such a massive part of it. And if kids don't have the right soft skills, good luck. It's just not happening.
With peer teaching, the story of survival, 26 years old, and was given the opportunity to revise his curriculum or get a degree in tennis teaching. And I was told for every 20 students I would be able to have another full-time faculty member. So I was there throughout the 1980s, and I never had another full-time faculty member. So it was really students teaching students. I was just forced into that situation. But I think really a program, if you've got 20 kids, it's like you should have 20 teachers. So when a new kid comes in, we have a young girl here, 17 years old from Montreal. She's a very good player. And I had her work with a young Japanese player who's based in California. He spent 6 months with us. So, I don't get up every day and go, okay, I'm going to try to make someone feel bad. But I have another student who's been in the system since he was 6 years old. So he's been in the program, we're talking teenagers, 15, 16, 17. So, okay, let's do the math here. So I tell this one kid, you've been taught this way for 10 years. This guy's been taught this way for 6 months. He's more knowledgeable than you are. I'm going to ask for feedback. Show and tell. Show me this, tell me that. But I think it's very, very powerful. So this young girl from Montreal is going, I can't believe how knowledgeable he is. But you really need to become your own coach. Coaching's not allowed anyway. Coaching,
yep.
You got to be able to problem solve. Let me run through this on Arkansas. Okay, you only be arrested. You could be arrested in Arkansas. You say Arkansas. There's only 3 million people. The largest city is the capital, Little Rock. Approximately 200,000 people. It's called the natural state. It's the first state to have a recreation park that was established by the government. Arkansas has 52 state parks, 8 national parks. Home of Sam Walton. I know I was so dumb for so long, still am, Flanagan, don't remind me, that I thought Sam's was a competitor to Walmart. I didn't realize that Sam was named after Sam.
The Sam.
Sam Walton. It's the third largest company in the world, Walmart. First is the U.S. Department of Defense. Second is the Chinese Army. This is just research, YouTube research, or Google research. The largest generator of revenue last year, 525 plus billion in revenue. Largest number of employees, 2.2 million. 75% of the upper management start as hourly associates. Sam started, when I visited your place, the Five and Dime. Now it's a museum in 1950. First Walmart opened in 1962. This is something I had no idea. Walmart operates in countries all over the world under 60 different names. I have, having visited you and got to know you so well that I have very limited experiences, but with Arkansas, Dennis Vandery had a place in Hot Springs, the Ozark Mountains.
Yep.
He hired students for us. I know that Thomas Olashad comes to my name, a Swedish coach, with Monique Post, another coach, worked there. David Wiest, Jeff Lewis is in Arkansas now. He's doing some work with some underprivileged kids. Aoife Wilson, she played at Tyler Junior College, was in our tennis tech program. And Robert Cox, who was a coach at Tyler Junior College, then he went to Arkansas. He hired Aoife to run his tennis camp, if not for a couple summers, at least for one. But I know she was in Arkansas. Razorbacks rule. Again, obviously home of the University of Arkansas, the Razorbacks. From where you live, there's a 40-mile bicycle or a bike trail to the university. Hunting.
Yeah, the Razorback Greenway.
What do they call it?
The Razorback Greenway.
Hunting and fishing are like a religion. A lot of picturesque little towns. There's 3 types of counties in Arkansas. There's dry counties, wet counties, moist counties. Very limited snow. The average temperature in the winter months, hard to believe, is 52. That seems like it's off. No traffic. Why move to Arkansas? No traffic. Lots of conservatives, and you could be very individualistic. It's outdoor living. Yeah, I think I should consider joining forces with you, and let's build a small place and run a pre-academy. It's right smack in the middle of the country. That business plan worked for FedEx in Memphis. Cost of living is way down. The housing, the taxes. Probably most importantly, I know Brandon's going to sing a Johnny Cash song now. Johnny Cash is from Arkansas. You got a song?
Something, Burning Ring of Fire.
Burn
Bring the fire.
Burning Ring of Fire. That was a great movie, Johnny Cash. But no, I think that I could, if you get on YouTube and you, even the part of the state you live in, Bentonville, it's probably not so much a secret anymore. So many people are moving from, not to get political, but they're moving from liberal states to conservative states, and then the cost of living. If someone's selling a house in California, they can do okay building a place in Arkansas. Do you feel that? Are you well aware that? People.
Oh, well aware.
People.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the cost is quickly skyrocketing in our area, and it's you talked about the mountain bike capital of the world. I mean, the Waltons, their goal when they decided that they were going to keep the home office here. I think there was a company that presented different places in the country that they could put a home office, and they said no, we're keeping it in Arkansas. They also started investing resources into. They understood that developing the place to where more people would want to move here and call this home. People in the business world, they started doing the mountain biking. We have Crystal Bridges, which is a world-class museum, and the Momentary that just opened up a couple years ago. But the art scene in our area actually is world-class as well, and they're starting to bring in more and more things, more restaurants opening up, more things to do. So there's everything that you want in a big town here in our small town. The traffic side of things, it's definitely not Dallas, but it's picking up. It's getting more. It's not extremely difficult to get around, but there are times of day where there's parts of town you definitely don't want to be in. But everything that they're doing in the area to help grow and to make it a better place to live is working. The whole idea with the mountain biking thing was they wanted to turn the area into like a ski resort for mountain bikes. And 100% they're doing it. I mean, we have over 300 miles of trails, and I think they're just part of the way there. I heard that not even a third of the way where they're going to be as far as the trails. And I think they're going to continue extending those in between towns and south, even to Fayetteville. But it's amazing. I mean, if someone really likes to get outdoors and likes art and likes mountain biking and music and good food, I mean, there's so much to do in this area. So it's not, when I moved here in 2005, it was not a desirable town for a lot of people to move to. There are things to do, but it definitely wasn't a spot where you heard people in California or New York talking about. But now it is for sure. I mean, I went skiing out in Montana not too long ago, and there's a couple people we mentioned where we're from, and they knew exactly what was going on down here. So secrets out, but there's like everything else. There's pluses and minuses to all of it. So I'm excited about what's going to be happening in our area in the next 20 years.
Sam Walton, I read where his theme was, first of all, he didn't want to give to charities because he thought his work was charitable. And obviously, in all the generations since his passing, it's just the opposite. Walmart does so much for charity, but increase sales by decreasing profit. Obviously, such a volume business. But let's touch upon Walmart. Brandon and Cole, what thoughts come to your mind as far as the growth? I mean, why so successful?
Well, I had a coffee, last week with a gentleman. He's actually my next door neighbor who worked for Walmart for many years, and he was sharing stories with about he worked in the trucking side of things. He said it would be 2 or 3 in the morning at their distribution centers, and Sam would come in and he would make his rounds, and he was checking in on how everything's going. And he said you could really tell how much Sam cared about all of his guys, and that things were working smoothly. Everybody was happy with what was going on. So I mean, definitely going back to the early days, it sounds like he really understood that he had to have a hand in making sure things were done right. We've talked, or you guys have talked about on the podcast in the past about, there's some programs out there where they hire out all these guys and they don't even know what's going on the courts, which sadly I think is more common than not nowadays in a lot of different businesses. But it sounds like Sam did an amazing job of getting everything started in the right direction and establishing good values and leadership stuff. My father-in-law has told me numerous stories about conversations he's had with him, and the whole maverick persona and whatnot. He liked a lot of people early on that weren't afraid to take chances and to kind of break the common direction that everybody else was going. But yeah, no, I think that Sam did an amazing job talking about the foundation again, of setting the foundation of the company. I mean, obviously you wouldn't be where you are now with Walmart if the foundation wasn't right and how the values of everything was set up.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the word building. Flanagan's old enough to have to tell us now that he's hiring some younger people and getting people to work. Brandon, I remember, I think it was $1,800 a month, $2,800 a month. But if you wanted to work study, it was $1,800 a month. And then when he started to work, he was paid $1,800 a month, and peanuts, and working 7 days a week, 24/7, just immersed in what you do. And tell people I don't like to do windows and floors, but I do windows and floors. I'll do whatever it takes, and just that attitude. But I do think that to have somebody grow to where it says that 75% of upper management start as hourly associates. That it didn't say hourly employees, but yeah, go ahead, Brandon.
No, one word that comes to mind, I think, for certainly your situation, and in coming back to Walmart as a company and being so close to that, being at the Walmart headquarters and everything involved with that. The one word that keeps kind of coming to mind for me is gratitude, and I think something that's missing a lot with tennis players. is certainly to show gratitude. I was just going to ask you if there's a measurable gratitude, say for what the company's done for a lot of people and for what the company's done for, say, Bentonville and Greater Arkansas, and how that might play a part in, what you're doing at the fitness center and with tennis. I think, like I said, I just think it's we have a lot of parents that, hey, Johnny, tell the coach thank you, and they walk away. But, is there a lot of gratitude and is there enough gratitude in tennis? And maybe if you could talk about the role Walmart plays in that.
Yeah, so they have numerous foundations. I know, the extended family, the sons and daughters of Sam that are still alive have their own foundations, but then they also have the Walton Foundation. The Walton Foundation has, they've opened theaters in the area and helped schools start in the area. And they're definitely heavily invested here, but I also know, they're invested around the world, anywhere that there's schools and places, that they have all these grants and, things that people can apply for. I've gone through those a couple of times, for numerous, tennis adventures. And so it's pretty accessible. I'm sure you can get on the website and be able to see exactly, the things that they've donated to or that they're involved in. But no, again, I spend a lot of time here, and I know that they're tremendously invested in the area and doing amazing things for our community and the art scene, the biking scene, everything around here. But it's there's pluses and minuses of it. I came from an area where there wasn't as much resources or opportunity with certain things, and so being up here and watching the kids that I work with grow up, and they're great kids for sure. But early on when I was working and trying to figure out what the pieces of the puzzle for our area as far as developing tennis players were, I remember having a meeting. I was working for the most part, I have worked for myself as an independent contractor for 16 years. There's 1 year that I worked for in a small academy in the area, and there was 2 other coaches. And we were having a meeting. I remember it was a big snow day. There's maybe 2 foot of snow on the ground, which is not common for here, but we were meeting in a little barbecue place, and we were frustrated with the way the kids were working. And we were talking about how it's just life is so good for a lot of kids around here because the schools in our area are terrific, fantastic. All the kids that go through the schools for the most part here are set up to be able to get scholarships if they want to. If they take the right school, they can go and they can probably get most things paid for, or they can get scholarships to help pay for a lot of stuff. But, that makes it then difficult for, how do you get a kid, talk about the ball pickup stuff, how do you get a kid to really bust at picking up balls if they know that, mom and dad say, I got to go to college and that's all taken care of? How do you get them to really push themselves as hard as they can on a daily basis if they have a backup plan? Sometimes having no backup plan is the best thing for you because you only have one way. You talk about success and look into, I read the talent code, but then also got into like talent is overrated and balance and so many of those books that have stories of success. And a lot of the people came from families with one parent circumstance, one parent, and they had to, do something to really help out the family and support things more. And it's there's so much psychology that goes into that as far as developing gratitude and empathy skills and all that stuff, and just having that chip on your shoulder where you really want to push yourself as hard as you possibly can. So it's I've gotten off on a little tangent, but yeah, it's we have a lot of great kids and a lot of good people in the area, but it's something that we're constantly thinking about of how to just improve on.
I just whispered into the mic. I never get off on a tangent.
No, it's not typical. Not typical of Steve at all.
With
that's a nice tangent. I don't think it was too aggressive.
One thought off a thought is it's amazing how many athletes are successful because there's one parent. I hate to say that, but it doesn't happen in tennis because unfortunately tennis is so expensive. But many public school athletes, they're very, very successful because they have one parent. And it's hardship, and it's also one messenger. Because a lot of times parents rule each other out. They cancel each other out. A lot of times people say, oh, there's such balance between the parents. And it really should be both parents on the same page. Parents should never disagree in front of their kid. And they both ideally should be on the same page. You know, they have different parenting styles, but no, this is what's principled. This is what's right. I read this about Arkansas, where it's the best of the South and it's the best of the Midwest. It's kind of interesting. So many, positive aspects from both the South, the Southern culture, and the Midwest. I can't think of her name. I should be able to tell you. Ted Dancer, who's on years ago on Cheers. Mm-hmm. His wife is from Arkansas. She just, you just can tell she's from Arkansas. Southern, polite, everybody likes her. Instant likability, but where not having so much of that edge where it's a little slower way of life. Or you're not in a rush to go nowhere fast. So it sounds like no traffic could be a good thing.
I'm thinking with the massive amounts of people who are listening to this podcast, I'm thinking Arkansas is going to get another influx of people coming there. Steve's putting on a pretty good performance as far as.
I mean, seriously, I should move to Arkansas. It comes down to pre-academy. But what you'd have to do, and people need to do that. They would need to go. Certainly, players get to a certain level where here in Florida there's competition, sunshine, clay courts, and competition. But before you go to a big academy like, say, IMG, formerly named Bollettieri's, ideally you want to have your game in place. It used to be called the toughest playground in tennis. I think of living in Tyler, Texas in the 80s. A word that could be used, it's a little more wholesome, a little more down to earth. And I think you could get kids to play multiple sports. I just think that there's way too much emphasis on tennis before kids are even teenagers. Emphasis on, practicing every day, winning. Really what should happen throughout the U.S. And we could be clever and we could get this done. Is kids from other sports should have great swings. I mean, the ready position is not that complicated. The ready position is the forehand volley. That's not so complicated. The ready position is the backswing for the forehand ground stroke. It's not that complicated. The volley is a pushing motion. It's linear. The strings go towards the target. It's like catching a ball. A forehand ground stroke, it's a circular swing. Take the racket around the beach ball. Circular swing, circular spin. But I'm ready to move, Flanagan. Let's go. Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, you got one?
No, I don't have anything right now.
I've got this one on Atlantis Hamilton in my notes. And we can't forget her little sister, Enya. They're both, which is, hats off to the family. They're both Little Mo champions. There's not too many families that have produced two Little Mo champions. It's not Wimbledon, but, it's an accomplishment. But you had Atlantis, correct me if I'm wrong, she played an entire tournament with a wooden racket. And she also played an entire tournament where you had her serve and volley every ball. Is that true or false? And please elaborate.
Yeah, I can't remember with the wood racket. We have our kids spend quite a bit of time of practicing and playing around with wood rackets. I can't remember on that one specifically. I do know that I had a couple kids that attempted to play high school matches with wood rackets. I didn't recommend. But there has been times with I do know with Colin and Atlantis that we did tournaments, and the goal was to serve and volley beginning and end of the tournament in singles. With doubles, that's one of those things that we've tried to press on all of our kids. We had a rule for many years with all of our kids that you serve and volley first and second ball every time. And we've relaxed that a little bit for different reasons, but with Atlantis and Colin, that was in their stage of development. Our group is a whole lot smaller, and I spent a lot of one-on-one time with them traveling to tournaments. But we really try to instill to them of moving forward, and they embraced it. And I know that I was actually telling one of our parents of one of the up and coming kids today about that whole idea that. That kid Yvonne that you met, Steve, he's embracing. His dad was really proud. He played a tournament this weekend in Dallas, and he was serving a ball in every single ball. And in the beginning, when they started with us a couple of years ago, he didn't understand, how to volley. He didn't have a great serve, and I didn't even know that was a thing. But he caught onto it pretty quick. But with Colin, he embraced it pretty early. Colin, actually, I would try to teach him the history of the game and introduce him, Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi, and he really took a liking to Pete Sampras and would love watching Pete Sampras videos. And so he would, go out and play tournaments and say that he was pretending to be Pete. And, Colin really helped pave a lot of the way in the early development of Alanis. And she watched that, and her dad watched that, and they understood the efficiency behind it and how it could work. And then trying to get them to understand with the women's game, which is a big rabbit hole that we could go down. But, with the women's game, you just don't see that much anymore of people moving forward. And I know, it really wasn't until the later 12s. We worked with, started Alanis when she was about 6.5, 7, and working with her until she had moved down and started spending time with you guys. 13, it really wasn't until later 12s that she started serving ball in first and second serve 100%. I believe, now 100% of the time. She would have matches where, come back from turn. How many times do you serve ball every time? Most times. Finally got to the point to where, later in the 12, she was doing it all the time, and she realized that it was her most effective way to play doubles. But yeah, we've tried to press that on people, and I think a lot of our kids really enjoy and starting to understand that, they're decent volleyers and it's efficient, and it's a good way to go.
I think for our listeners, Alanis Hamilton, she's obviously very good. She's top 5 in the country anyway. I mean, I was at an event where she beat the number 1 player in the 14s. Yeah, you've mentioned Colin many, many times. Let's get into Colin's story. But before we do that, let's talk about Yunnan. When I came out to visit Colin and his family, yourself, we swung by Yunnan's garage. Tell us that story.
Yuvon. U-Y-V-A-N. Yuvon.
You changed it again? Yuvon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I believe in Tamil, the language, it would be Yuvan. But, he goes by Yuvon.
It reminds me of Roberto Cala from Peru, who worked with us a long time. Brandon knows him well. Some kid would, his name would be Lawrence, and Roberto's calling him George, and the kid goes out, "My name is Lawrence," and he'd say, "Okay, George, go over there." And the rest of the time, you would call him George, and then everybody was calling the kid George. It was just great. But you bond. So we swing by. This is what should happen, listeners. I mean, this is what should happen in America. So many great things, so many great companies. One simple idea. It said, okay, we'll start it in the garage. The FM Performance Center, hopefully 10 years from now, there's one in every state. But tell us about UBON in the garage.
Yeah, so, the story with UBON started really pre-pandemic. I was talking about working at Walmart and only being able to work with kids that are Walmart. The families work for Walmart. It was a situation where I had a lot of people that were reaching out that wanted some advice, and I agreed to sit down and have coffee with him and his dad. And I sat down, and it was just a different deal than I'd ever been around. A parent-child meeting. It's 6:30 a.m. at a Starbucks, and the kid shows up. He's 8 years old, and he's got his racket, and the dad's asking me questions about kids in our program and the things that we do. And he tells me, my son, he wants to play pro tennis, and okay, so we're talking about certain things. We're talking about talent code. I'm giving information about the GreatBase. Hey, check out the website. Follow this information. You guys need, put in this amount of time. Do these types of things. And somewhere in the meeting, I'll never forget it. But Yuvon just looked at me and dead in the eye, and he just said, "Will you please work with me? I just want to be a pro. Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal. I just want to be a pro." And I was like, "Oh, this is different. That's kind of weird. Normally you don't have an 8-year-old kid staring you down, telling you what he wants." And then he kept talking to the dad, and Yuvon kept interrupting and just asking to be able to do stuff with him. So, walk away from the meeting and gave him information, gave him some homework, and a few days later, a week later, everything starts shutting down. The pandemic and quarantine starts happening for everybody. So even our program, we stopped doing in-person drills. And so I started sending homework to him and the kids in our program, and he's doing it every single day. And they lived in a really small apartment, probably 2-bedroom apartment. I wouldn't imagine it's more than 600 square feet. But he's doing the DMP program. He was waking up each day and doing his push-ups and burpees and shadowing, whatever the exercise was for the day, and sending me videos of that. I give him feedback on things that he should be working on and give him a little homework of a little kind of almost things he would have to find on GreatBase Intelligence Applied. And then they kept coming back. And so 3 months later, the quarantine lifts and people start getting out more and started having him come out and do some drills with us. And he had improved tremendously just by shadowing and the DMP and the at-home stuff. And I could just tell that he was committed. So I started spending a lot of time with him. And since then, maybe about, a year ago, his family bought a house really close to some public courts, and they spend so much time taking him out. And, they set up at their house, got an all-in-one backboard. He's got a ping pong table, which was a part of Alanis' story as well. They have their own training center there at their house. I mean, like the videos, going back to the videos with you did a long time ago with Victor, the at-home, drills type stuff. They set all that up at their house. And so, I'm more or less doing a lot of consulting with them, but they'll go to tournaments and record matches, and he'll chart matches, and he'll hit on his backboard, and he'll do ping pong, and then they'll go out with their slinger bag and do drills, and they follow the content, they follow the information. And his dad actually works for Morgan Stanley, and I believe his role is something of helping programmers to be just more efficient and better with their work. And so one of the things that they use is called Kanban, but it's basically just like a daily planner of things that he needs to do and, checking off the list. Again, very similar to what was on the at-home drills with Victor. If you want to be a tennis hero, you better not put a 0. He knocks it out on a daily basis. He puts so much work in and effort in, and it's amazing to watch. It's one of those types of things that makes me as a coach just understand more and more, seeing commitment level from a family like that, mindset of the household.
No, what's great about that too is that you made a major impact on his life, and you're not doing it at Walmart because his father's not an employee, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
With during the pandemic, sometimes just being honest, it just sounds so negative. But during the pandemic, when everybody and their brother was putting out a video on how to practice at home. Oh, whoa. I mean, it was just like, are you kidding me? Vic Braden would say, shut up and tell me how to hang onto the racket. It was just, okay, bounce the ball down, bounce the ball up, roll the ball on your strings. I mean, and we're talking about high profile, recognized tennis teaching pros. They put it out on YouTube. This is what you do when you practice on your own. And there's just so many different routines. But the family was so gracious in thanking me for stopping by, but it was the other way around. I mean, that was uplifting. That was refreshing. That's what should happen. You need to be able to practice in your garage or a space. And some kids don't have a garage, so it's like, okay, we got to be able to do it in the parking lot. We got to find a way to practice. Like you said, the worst business model is 7,200 of heated, lighted indoor space, and it's just one pro and one coach. That was very, very much a rush for me to think this is great, but it's not happening if people aren't doing that. They should study the content. So we do have that course, how to practice at home. I contacted both the USPTA and the PTR during the pandemic and said, we have a course on how to practice at home. And unfortunately, for political reasons, it wasn't put up. It wasn't put up. It wasn't acknowledged. It wasn't acknowledged. And tell us again how old he is. You met him. He was how old?
He's 10. He's 10, I believe. Yeah, he'll be 11 this year.
Yeah, time goes by fast. But you know, if we get a little frustrated, are you great base? I'm great base. Are you a great baser? We should have called it solid fundamentals. With Atlantis Hamilton, Arthur Ashe line about Welby Van Horn, you can tell a Welby student from a mile away. You know, and I do think that you mentioned table tennis for this young boy Ubon, is that Russ Hamilton has a pretty high level background in table tennis. That's just something for people. Get a racket in your hand and understand the spin of the ball, and it's very interesting. I tell people when they're playing ping pong, do this for 20 hits. Let the ball hit the table, then let the ball hit the floor, and then lift it up on the table. You know, it'd be better for them to do it 100 times, but they don't do it. They just start right away playing. So again, when you're playing, listeners, the young kids that play ping pong, the ball hits on your side of the table, let it hit the ground, and better yet, the floor. If it's a little uneven, that's fine. It's great. It's bad bounce. But then you really have to lift up. And I think also when you play table tennis, initially to play with, like you're playing tennis, you're going to play more with, you know, tennis mechanics when you play table tennis.
It's one of my favorite drills. We do that on a daily basis, Steve, with our kids. And, you know, going back to Doug Burdick's podcast, I heard him talk about it. Made me smile to think about it. He said that his dad even had a what they called a steady tournament, and you had to have the ball bounce twice, you know, and just slowing things down, not trying to hit it hard. But we do that. I start nearly every practice with that now, where we're doing but we call it multi-bounce, but we try to use that word steady now that I heard with Doug, but letting the ball bounce multiple times. You know, you think about so many practices a lot of times and how hard coaches are yelling to kids sometimes about getting there with one bounce. Well, a lot of them are going to be better off just letting it bounce a couple of times and trying to work on balance more. The whole idea of, you know, the ball being lower and having to sit down and lift up, or even hand feeding, letting the ball bounce multiple times. But it's such a great exercise. And we use multi-bounce drills all day long with our program, and I think it's one of the best things you can do.
Think of Andy and Leo Fitzell. They both worked hard helping us out. And all you have to do is look at those Instagram videos. So many other things. And you know that very well, and you've complimented so many times. So we had this place where you run, and you came to visit. So, you know, you had to run, and you ran on the other side of the building, and no one could see you. So once the kids got on the other side of the building, no one could see them run. But Andy, for example, he'd be looking right out the window. Same as with Leo, they could see who's not running. But also, too, is that right by where they were working, where they had two desks, there was a ping pong table. And if you want to hear people get stupid, is here, listen to people who don't know how to play ping pong. It's just going to be an argument, you know. And also, you want to teach mental toughness, is have people play ping pong and just, you know, be quiet, breathe, focus. And you know, we teach lightning ball, which is a spin-off of ultimate frisbee. And you know, you got, and you know, sometimes let's just go have fun. Okay, all right, we're going to play lightning ball tennis camp style, or we're going to play lightning ball like athletes. You know, man-to-man coverage. It's just back checking and hustling. With, but let's talk about Colin Matthews. You know, I know that you know, he was really your first student. You brought him to us. I have so many stories to share with Colin. But also, too, is that like in any junior program, and it takes years. I think of Tyler, Texas. We say the second 5 years, you know, this is what the program produced. But it's the people in those first 5 years, they've helped pave the way with, you know, when you get to the point where you're developing national champions, it just doesn't happen overnight. But so it's really a signature. The strength of the individual comes out, but you can just tell that the people are taught fundamentally well. But with the listeners, let's talk a little bit about Colin Matthews. Let's talk about his injury and where he is now. He's obviously with his family, Mark and Jenny. They're living in Bentonville. Mark's worked with Walmart for a long, long time. But tell the listeners, and we'll go through that.
Yeah, no, it's it's a tough story to tell, but with Colin, started working with Colin when he was about 7 years old, and mentioned earlier, worked with him so 12, 13, and then he had joined you in Memphis. Spent many years with you in Memphis, and then down in Nona. But Colin was he was at home in around May, June, and he was riding a longboard and had an accident where he fell off and wasn't wearing a helmet, and he is now he's had a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, and his family, it was a near-death experience for him, and thankfully he's still around, and his mom and dad have done everything they possibly can to help him along and push everything along. I believe he's still considered in what they call a semi-coma state, but he was, he's in the hospital for a couple months here in Northwest Arkansas, and then they moved him to Chicago to a place called, I believe it's called maybe the Ability Lab, Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in Chicago. And I know that there was a lot of progress that was made there, but then they made the decision to come back home and for the whole family to be more comfortable. And again, his mom and dad have done an amazing job of just taking care of him and being there. Yeah, his dad just left his job with Walmart to help Colin out full time. And they're doing so much for him. I got to spend time with him over the last couple of days. On Monday, me and Juan, Coach had spent a lot of time with you, and his brother Alfie took Colin down to his last hyperbaric chamber appointment. Then today, me and one of my students, Kaylin, she has a couple of 3-month-old puppies, thanks to you. That's a nice story, but we took the puppies over today. Colin always wanted a dog, so took them over to play around with Colin, and spent the afternoon, a couple hours with him. But it's definitely a situation where it's going to be a very long road to recovery. I'm an optimistic person by nature, so every time I go over, I'm always trying to find something to see progress. But it's definitely going to be a lot of work for him. Just to get to the point of having a pretty functional life again. You think about just a split second, a situation. Colin has spent a lot of time doing multiple outdoor sports. I rode mountain bikes with him, and I knew that he liked skateboarding and doing things like that. Just the whole family, they were always really active, which is part of what made him such a great athlete. Just a split second where something went wrong, and it completely changed the trajectory of his life.
I know, and we found out kids with their phones. Rush Ganji, who you mentioned earlier, very good tennis player. Spent a lot of time with Colin. He just looked it up on his phone, and right away, one of the worst brain injuries that one can sustain. I must ask, puppies, thanks to me?
Puppies, thanks to you. Yeah, people wouldn't put you off as that type of guy, loving.
Flanagan does. Flanagan does.
Yeah, the story was Kaylin was spending time with you. Kaylin and her family were spending time with you this summer, and I guess they were, being her and her sister were a little nervous and uptight. And you looked at the dad and said, "You guys need to get a dog." And that he looked at that as his window. He had always wanted a dog, and his wife didn't want a dog, and he came back to use that as ammunition. And now they have two dogs, 3-month-old puppies.
Dogs are great. With Kaylin, that's the player I referred to earlier. We call everybody in and go, this girl hits the ball better than anybody here on the forehand volley. So we start working on the backhand volley. Everybody in here, she hits the ball better than anybody in the backhand volley. But a lot of times people can't see that. They just, juniors are just with the score. Coming back to Colin, just think, Robin Williams, the late actor, comedian, used to say, "I've become my father." My father, for me, just to think about Colin just brings me to tears. With our listeners, so he's growing, he's young, he's still got a couple of years left in high school, sophomore year. he was at our place before the accident, and he was supposed to be there longer, but with the pandemic, he doesn't feel well. He's got a sore throat. He's got a temperature, and his mother is just thinking about, that's just the way she's wired. She's thinking about everybody else. The next thing you know, he's just on an airplane, goes home. It was just crazy things about the pandemic. And I don't, to go back and go, geez, and he should have just, the plan was at that time he was scheduled to be there hitting more tennis balls. But people who are connected with tennis and sports, running, I know I put something on Facebook, wrote a post, a couple of posts. I would hear his name all the time. I recommended just for therapy to just put more emphasis on his running, because he was a kid who could definitely be on track to run at University of Arkansas. I mean, high level cross country, high level track. Because we on this outdoor field, he had the record. Running in the dirt, we ran a mile in the 440s. 448, whatever it was, and he had the record, so his name would always come up. Who's got the record? And I know he ran a 430 mile. His tennis, he was a much better player than he allowed himself to be, because he was just so competitive. You know this probably better than anybody but his parents. I remember one time when he was in Tennis Memphis, he was the youngest kid we had. We took a group of kids out. I just knew going out to work with his outfit, have 60 courts, 4 indoor centers. I'm just going to be the old bald-headed guy. Like, who's this guy? But I show up with a coach and an intern and a half dozen players. And you mentioned Victor's name many times. He had just won the Orange Bowl. Colin was the youngest of the group, but at that time he had the best game, and he would come forward. So anyway, when I just hear this pounding, and a nice place to stay, and housing the visiting players, I go up, and he just lost some computer game. He's just pounding his fists, a carpeted floor, just pounding his fists. But I was at a tournament one time where he just lost his cool, and I said, Matthew's over here. We're going to watch the next match. And it was in Florida, and the kid that, the next match, the kid that beat Colin had lost to someone that Colin had played. That we all know in tennis that, you can't just go by that, where A can beat B and B can beat C, but A can't beat C. But I just think of coming back to my father, here's this guy who loves sports. He's competitive. He's trying to find himself. Great skill set that you taught him. And 430 mile, I think it was maybe a 11.5. So actually Tal Goodman, who plays for Penn now, and Arush Ganji, they're a little bit older. They were there, and Matt Cloro, national coach at the USTA, setting this up, and they go over and they're playing, really highly acclaimed juniors. Okay, this girl won the junior US Open. This girl won the junior French. This girl or this woman has been ranked in the top 100. And I remember Andy Fitzell taking both those guys over. It only took you 90 minutes to go to the net. They just didn't force. They just didn't go forward. They played a little kid game, got tight. So Colin, several times he was there. He rocks up, and he goes over and he wins 3-3, and but just so many stories. With
there was I got one that I thought about the other day was talking about Colin just being different and being tough, and he was there was a kid that lived in the area. It's funny connecting dots when you had Chuck Creasy on here. He had mentioned a kid from Arkansas that's really improving. The kid's name is Hayden Shoemake, and he was just a little bit older than Colin coming up, and so Colin would play him in tournaments at times, and Colin being a couple of years younger, and then at the time, Hayden was always a taller kid, a stronger kid, and so they had played numerous times, but they were playing a match here in town, small tournament, and I think actually Alanis was playing a match behind me, and Colin was playing on another court right beside it, and I'm coming forward, Colin not being scared. Colin had come to the net, and at the time Colin was probably 4.5 feet, and let's say Hayden's 5'4", 5'5". I was a 13-year-old, and Colin comes to the net he hits an approach shot, hits some ball short. Hayden comes up and just thumps the ball and hits Colin right in the chest, right in the middle of the chest, and he hits the ground real quick, and then everybody's just kind of shocked and looking at it, and Colin pops up rolls up his sleeve and goes to baseline. I remember turning around and just like, well, a tear came to my eye because of like, that dude's so tough. And just having so many years of working with him and watching how he reacted to that and handled that, it wasn't common.
No, here's a compliment. Brandon, you may have visited our place and met Colin, but didn't really interact with him very much or very long. But he's not a tennis kid. That's a compliment. For those coaches that are listening and you get tired of tennis kids, Americanized junior tennis players, just go to YouTube and listen to some Larry Bird interviews. Go watch some Larry Bird highlights. Brett Favre tells a story about the mile. When I grew up, every coach, before they even asked you your last name, they'd want to know what your mile was. And, the football teams, it was, okay, you got to break a 6-minute mile. Then the 5-minute mile, Jim Ryan had a 3:51 for the world record for the longest time. If you get on YouTube, he broke 4 minutes in high school. And it's about his friends doing it. Well, this guy was fast enough to run a 200. And they would just pull him along, and they got Ryan to break a 4-minute mile in high school. And, he failed in making teams in the 3 major sports, football, basketball, and baseball. Got cut. He ended up being a tall, lanky guy, great stride. And he tells people, I didn't know anything about running. He was broke at a 4-minute mile. You get on YouTube, you can watch Ryan just shaking his head back and forth. We were on a track today, and I know little or nothing about it, but keep your head still, and your arms go up and down. You're going forward, so don't let your arms go east and west. But no, the mile, it was a huge thing back in the day. I loved it. I mean, when I watch people run through the neighborhood, I can pretty much guess what split they're running at. Steve Prefontaine, you see some kids with a Nike T-shirt that says Pre, and I go, do you know what that stands for? So get on YouTube and find out about Steve Prefontaine. There's 2 movies made on him. You want to be a tennis player, you got to run. So we could really go over many stories on where Colin was not a tennis kid. With Brett Favre, he retires. He played 20 years. He retired 3 times. Minnesota, and he played for the Jets, right?
Oh yeah.
So how do you? I guess,
that was a tough season.
I guess by the look at Flanagan's face, it was.
Probably should have told us he had a torn bicep tendon, but he just kept that to himself for the second half of the year. No big deal.
But,
yeah.
So he doesn't get up to 250. You get on YouTube. He's great interviews, great storyteller. He gets up to 248. So his wife, who's really an athlete, she does triathlons. So her and some of her friends are going to do a 5K, and he goes, ladies, I'll go with you. He said 70 yards, he locks up. So now he goes, when I'm into the gym, he lifts more weights and he does more fitness now. But he says for kicks and giggles, he still runs a mile for time. Junior tennis players don't realize when they get on a college campus, the coaches, if it's a good coach, it's a good solid program, you're going to have to break a certain mile time or you won't get to hit any balls. But no, I think that the running was really helping Colin out. I think that again he just needed to get control. He was just ultra competitive. You can get to the point where you want to win too much, where you got to enjoy competition. I tell this story about Ty Tucker all the time, who obviously knows so much about sport and character. He just goes, hey, if these 2 guys play 10 times, what's the breakdown going to be? We're junior tennis players. It's the ultimate. Oh, okay, who won? Who won? What was the score? I mean, it was just one match. The really good juniors, they by the time they're in college, they've played somebody 20 times. 20 times with but certainly that's a great way to be competitive. Coming back to all these things you brought up Spartak, Natalia, who with Colin, I would say this is that Natalia influenced Colin, but Colin influenced Natalia because we would run this place in Memphis, Eldon Rourke, and Colin was one of those guys. Just like actually Natalia's oldest son I recommended that he become a runner because he pretty much shot himself in the foot. He just was so competitive. He didn't learn how to hit the ball. I watched a match the other day with Max, Natalia's son, Max. Natalia's son, if I get this right. Son, or the brother. I'm not making any sense. Nataya's son, Max, never learned to hit the ball, but now he runs. I guess he's breaking. He's close to breaking 430. He's got 2 more years in high school. But we watch this girl so competitive, and she has no strokes, but she keeps the ball in play, and she fights for every point. So you don't want to break that spirit. I was talking to a couple of guys today. They're just being so casual in practice. I mean, it's just like, no, you have to be ultra competitive. I've met a lot of top 10 players, but I think of 3 top 10 players that I've got to know really well. Wayne Sabin, Welby Van Horn, Carleen Bassett. Carleen Bassett, her husband Robbie, said she can't play golf because she has to run after the ball. She can't walk after the ball. She was giving me the gears one time for putting a little weight on, and I'd say I could knock weight off easy, and it was dropping weight. We were just talking like 10, 12 pounds, but she's a fitness freak. And so I'm having lunch with her at some restaurant, and I put salad dressing on my salad, and she just starts screaming at me. So, Colin had that, but you have to try to keep a lid on it and, combine relaxation with intensity, which is not that easy to do. But yeah, right there at the end, the mile time, and then going over to the USTA. You mentioned Juan. Andy Roddick said this: if you have three names, that means you're a clay court player. Well, Juan's got 4. He teases and says, only give away 3. He's part of the cartel. He's from Colombia. But Juan, Sebastian Marinke, brother Alfie, those guys are saints. They have the type of day-to-day where they can do this, but they're out in Arkansas with the Matthews family helping out Colin. I was in the room 2 different times. Now, I know this is a brain injury, and just you pray, hope for a miracle, and miracles happen. But I was in the room with a couple of players with their parents, spinal cord injuries, where I just think of 2 vividly. Maybe I really don't think there's a third, but 2 come to my mind. And in the room, and the doctor comes in and tells the family that the player will never walk again, run again. They're going to be confined to a wheelchair the rest of their life. I know Russ Hamilton, he said to me, Colin is such a competitive outdoor person, such an active person. But certainly prayers are with the family. Any other thoughts on that, just with Colin?
No, say just Jenny and Mark are doing absolutely, everything that they can, and with Juan and Alfie being in town, they that's about gratitude, having gratitude for people that would go out of their way to come spend some time and help out with them. But
we had Carla on. Carla Navarro Wojcik, and I tease and say, okay, if there's a tennis heaven, this coach is going, this coach is not going, and da 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 da. But no, those 2 are on heaven. They're going to heaven. They're great. They're givers. They're not takers, and that's very refreshing. To touch upon Colin in Memphis more. I can remember he's an introverted guy, and Roosh Ganji and him, they were like brothers. I know Roosh and his father went to see Colin. They were playing Kalamazoo, and they went by, saw him in the hospital. And, Roosh's father, he's also a super, super guy. And so we're in a Panera, and Colin, he's the smallest guy, and Roosh is just frustrated. And Colin just punches him. It's so funny. Colin just punches him, and I look at him and I go, way to go. And, and I guess that's a positive. There's a positive, negative, positive. So Roosh just looks at him and goes, "You can't do that." And I just started laughing, and it was the tennis kid who didn't throw the punch back, and but there was so many times where he was so quiet. I would be asking people for the answer, and Colin would have the answer, and the kids were older, and they you know, and at that time bigger too. You know, I think that you know, that group, Spencer Johnson, he's still chipping away at it. He's on a mission. And
The Labrador,
why do you say that?
or the golden retriever.
Yeah. I love nicknames. I don't let people use nicknames. You have to be over 60 and bald-headed to use a nickname. Yeah, Johnson, you're such a golden retriever.
Not the smart assistant.
Yeah, that's right. Did a camp where we were up in Cincinnati, Brian Clark's place, and he comes in. He has the most experience, so he's going to be my assistant. And I brought him out each time. Go, all right, where's my not so bright assistant? But you know, he's scheduled to go to UCLA. I think I recommended that. I mean, not that it was my decision by any means, but what a way to grow up. I mean, to be on a mission like that. I mean, Lilov, he was in that group. You mentioned Arush Ganji. I'm not sure exactly. You know, I think he may go to Tufts. I mean, just so many things with the pandemic. I mean, he's kind of been stuck at 11-8 for 3 years, it seems. But you know, a good solid tennis player, but done well academically. Talking
about the connection between all that. I mean, I was out at Easter Bowl last year and hadn't seen Spencer in a long time, but I actually ran into Spencer and his dad Joey, and then we connected afterwards and took Alanis up to hit with Spencer up close to where they were living. But you know, again, that was one of those things that through the years of meeting Spencer in Cincinnati, and I think maybe even ran into them when they were in Memphis. Again, talk about the network.
Yeah,
group of people around.
So we take this group out to Memphis, and Waleed Adair was there. He's scheduled to go to Dartmouth. Same thing. That's a bad joke. Sorry, guys. Sorry, you Ivy Leaguers. So he's scheduled to go to Dartmouth, and you mentioned Rohan Sandev. He's a great fighter. He's at Purdue. Now, there's some of the players we've worked with. Rohan comes.
He was a spelling bee camp, right?
What's that?
Rohan wasn't he in the spelling bee? I think there was a special on him.
Spelling bee, yeah. I think he was on ESPN for that. But he's a guy, great fighter, but great parents. But used to tease where he didn't get in line and really learn the technical skills, but he's got the will to win. What you want to do is combine the will with skill. So the group in Memphis, I know, the young players, it's all on video. We went in and we made 108 videos. We filmed every kid, and that was really a fun time. Whereas I guess I could talk about if people could look it up. We'll put it on Facebook. It's the story of the band.
Talking about group dynamics, I mean, that was incredible coming in and watching from afar from the videos you guys did. But yeah, we had come in with a small group early on and just helped out a little bit and witnessed a little bit of that, just shuffling people through. I remember being there for a few days and y'all had like some cord on the end that was tarped off that they were doing nothing but videoing all day long. But yeah, it was amazing. I remember one of those last days when we had brought our kids in and we were doing a big shadowing. Maybe there was 50 kids spread out. They were brand new. That had just spent a week or two learning the system, and how good a lot of the kids had become or already taken to the information was amazing.
No, that's all on film. And again, you said it. Andy Fitzell did such a great job cleaning up so many things, and you'd have to even tell me what is it stored on? What would it be stored on? A hard drive. Yes?
I have no idea.
A hard drive, I'm sure. The Dave Jordan, and the people could look that up. Dave Jordan, the Boomer, the Talking Ball Machine. But we'll put up the story of the bagel. Colin was part of that. I think Spencer and Arush and Victor Little, the four of them. So we're at Panera, and I just noticed that one of them, it was... I'll give the name away. They had bought the bagel where there's more sugar on it than there's snow on Mount Everest. I mean, whichever bagel it is, it's just pounded with sugar. It's bagel on a sugar, not sugar on a bagel. So I just kill everybody and I go, okay, it's your parents' money. You bought it. I guess you're going to eat it now. But that's out. You don't need to buy one of those bagels. So it was Johnson, actually. So I'm talking. It reminds me of one of the Saturday Night Live skits where the Bears, they're interviewing Michael Jordan. It's Chris Farley going, the Bears, the Bears. So Johnson at the time, I was saying, don't buy the bagel. Don't buy the bagel. And so Johnson's just going, I want one. I want one. I want one. As soon as I get done talking to him, he rocks right up to the counter and buys one of the bagels. So we made a video, and it was Johnson. It was Johnson. But Colin was one of the kids. Learn that from Vic. We have so much of that on film, all those young kids training. But, we get so busy. That's the goal that we have eventually with this GreatBase, solid fundamentals is be able to just show that. Because we've been in the business of developing players, not recruiting players.
Talk about food. I mean, that's kind of a good lead in some of the other things. I mean, things that people didn't know about Colin, or a lot of people wouldn't know about Colin. But Jenny, his mom, has always been in nutrition as far as I knew her, and she did such an amazing job the years that he was playing of making sure that his nutrition was in tip top shape. And I'd take him out of town to tournaments, and he always would make, at least with me, where we go, he was making good decisions as far as what he was eating and putting in his body. He was really well aware of that. And I think that's one of the things when we're talking about his mile time. I mean, there's a lot of kids that can really run, but nutrition is one of the last missing pieces in the puzzle for them. Djokovic, you look at him and how much that changed his career trajectory. I mean, had he not figured out that he had a gluten allergy, he was pulling out of tournaments, this and that, and obviously you look back now, it wasn't because he wanted to.
There's a great Andy Roddick line where he has a win over Djokovic in his history. He goes, yeah, but he was full of gluten.
Yeah.
I think, but that has to start from the get-go. I mean, they talk about people and their taste buds, and no, I know Jenny, the sugar police, you can just see it in her eyes where, people are eating so poorly. But and he did, but we eat well. But I can remember a time where we went to a place, Jason's Deli. So I go, Matthews, you with us? What you eating here? You eating there? And he goes, I'm good. I said, all right. He said I needed to go to the neighboring store. So I think it was a Kmart. So at Jason's Deli, they have ice cream. So the next thing I know, I look over, and Matthews, he's got this big bowl. Of course, you can eat all the ice cream you want, but he wasn't a customer that night. He didn't go through and have a proper meal. But he just had this bowl. He's over the corner eating ice cream. I think also, too, the skateboarding, he was a guy that, not afraid to fall, not afraid to take a risk. And, we have, people do a flip on a balance beam. I mean, there's kids that they have a fear of going to the net. It's almost like you're telling them you got to go pet a rattlesnake. They just don't go in.
But Jason's ice cream is hard to resist, dude, to be honest. I lived many years as a young tennis pro struggling, and for $7.27 at Jason's Deli, you could get the manager special and get half a sandwich and a salad bar and all the ice cream you could eat. So I survived for a few years at least off of that.
Dennis Vandermeer used to just say, I can hear them calling from the refrigerator. Dennis. It's the ice cream. They're calling me. The ice cream container is calling me, Dennis. With some good lines. Haagen-Dazs, where one of our students, Gary Halpert, who wrote the book Eat to Win, Robert Haas, you have to correct me, Robert Haas. So I remember being at a Robert Haas workshop on nutrition. He wrote the book Eat to Win, and that was like the biggest thing. And Bill Rogers was there, and it was at Boca West, and it was in 1980. And Rogers was like the best marathon runner in the world at the time, and he was training because Moscow in the summer would have been hot and humid, and so he's training in Boca. So Rogers gets up, Bill Rogers, Bostonian, and says, I eat whatever I want. I just have to brush my teeth. He goes, if you run 20 miles a day, you can eat whatever you want. So Lendl really got into fitness, and Navratilova and Lendl, they put fitness on the map, really. Nancy Lieberman, the basketball player with Navratilova. The stories are amazing with Lendl. The people who went to train with Lendl. Sampras says it, made a major impact on his career. So it was Robert Haas. So McEnroe is asked, what diet are you on? He goes, I'm on the Haagen-Dazs diet, not the Robert Haas diet. There is some psychology to definitely to food, but no, I think that's amazing. A change with fitness is changed. I think that nutrition has changed. I think, you talk to people about the mental aspects, that's changed. But I think what's really got worse is ball striking. At this, you'll have to come down here and visit the FM Tennis Performance Center. Every aspect of the game is covered under one roof. We have to try to find a way. I think really with the nutritionist who's on Brandon's team, I think it's more the parents need to, the kids are kids. Sugar's a drug. Get the parents on that, all you have to do is go through a grocery store. And why do they say health food? There's like one little section, health food. And then you watch what people put in their carts. For me, I think Brandon Flanagan was guilty of being a young guy and having his parents' money, and when he was really young and going to the store and buying some Pop-Tarts.
Here comes the Pop-Tart story, Cole.
No, I won't tell you. Here's what a comedian says about Pop-Tarts. That's for kids that are too lazy to go get the milk.
Accurate.
With
nothing like a cinnamon Pop-Tart.
You mentioned DMP. We need to come back. We've put forth an effort it's free, daily monitoring program, getting kids to do that. We wanted the older kids. You talked about, Brandon mentioned selfishness. You mentioned empathy. But no, we certainly appreciate your support with the curriculum we put together. And, your kids have the signature coming back to Kalen. And there's others. I do think if someone watches Alanis Hamilton, they can't see it so much if they don't have the technical eye. I asked a kid today, we're in traffic and we're by a FedEx logo, and you and Brandon know what I'm going to say next. People that study our content, they just know I'm going to say, do you see the arrow within that FedEx logo? And the kid said, no. I said, well, and I told the other kid, I said, hey, go to your computer, show him the arrow. And once you see it, you will always see it. Just like an open racket face on the backhand. And once you see it, you always see it. And but let's wrap it up here. Flanagan, you got a question? We'll have to go 2 more questions and we'll wrap it up. Johnny Cash.
Sure. Just I think a couple things to come back from earlier on, just to kind of roundtable discussion in terms of suggestions on how to filter through the bad information, suggestions for players and parents, suggestions for kind of those that are trying to put out fact-based information, how to better help people find it, but also how to help keep emphasizing people that they need to practice on their own. Coming back to the talent code, one of the big indicators of a really high performer was that they were going to spend the most time practicing alone. And so, again, like you said, eliminate the pro, and like Steve said, not having to have a tennis kid that's always on the court with a paid professional, but those players that practice the most on their own will be the best players, just from the research that's been done. But just suggestions on those 2 things, I think, just to openly discuss those things. Seems like they're 2 big themes from our discussion tonight, but just filtering through bad information and getting players to practice more at home. What are your thoughts on that, Cole?
Yeah, no, there's so many different things. I think it's helped me tremendously of not having the tennis background when I was younger and coming into it a little bit later and trying to see things from a different perspective. But honestly, I think there's so many things, and not just tennis, and a lot of sports industries that need to be flipped on their heads. I think of a story when talking about Brookhaven. I'd come down to visit Steve, and he was having a little meeting with a few of the parents and coaches that were there observing. And my wife was actually in that meeting with me as well. And I remember Steve proposing the question, hey, what's more important, repetitions or quality? Everybody goes quality, quality, quality. And he said repetitions. And then everybody's kind of stunned, trying to think through it. And it really took me a few years to process that, but how important it is more than anything, for kids trying to find ways to get repetitions, that whole idea, I think the combination of, as I had grown as a coach and then meeting Yvonne and his dad, and then getting them to understand early on. I mean, one of the things that they showed Steve was they had this spreadsheet of they try to count as many of the repetitions that he gets, and they put it into a system and they keep track of it. And I don't think everybody needs to do that to the extent they're doing it. It's amazing information to look at, and for me as a coach, for them as a parent and a player to be able to understand. But it's the repetition count, right? I tell a lot of our kids sometimes being out, and it's really if you had a number above every kid's head out on the court of how many repetitions they got, generally the kid that's got the most repetitions is going to be one of the better players. Not to the T, but a lot of times it's going to be drastic. And, so again, with the industry, we've got to find ways to get repetitions in. We were talking in episode 81 about spec tennis and, how it's such a good bridge sport to tennis. It's similar to pickleball. You can play it on a pickleball court. If you can't beat them, join them. At least use the courts that are going up right now. Get kids out playing more mini tennis, getting more repetitions in. Find ways to make it cheaper, get more people in smaller spaces. Take the idea of futsal from the talent coach and get people out in a smaller area and just, let them have fun and let a lot of those things take over. Let the science of the court take over. The physics of the game take over. People stay in it long enough, they start to figure the information out, or start to figure a lot of things out, not everything, but, and then if we can find ways, with a GreatBase, Steve and I have talked about GreatBase version 2, and that's not necessarily saying we need new information, but I think we have acknowledged and we've have conversations about trying to, and this is one thing that Andy was doing an amazing job of, and got to keep on with all of it, but it's trying to make all the information more crystal clear and getting people to understand what the system's trying to do. There's too many stigmas, and people are way off with as far as what's happening, what's going on.
Yeah, so many things. I like how you say tennis intelligence applied 2.0. We definitely need to do that again. Miran Mann, who's been a guest on the podcast, I spoke to him just yesterday. He was doing an internship. It was, I think, 15, 16 years ago. And I know Brandon used that course when he was a tennis camp director at Harvard. He didn't use all 365, all clips. But no, we definitely need to do what we're doing, do it better. I think that's around the corner. From a personal standpoint, sold the property in Orlando and making steps to work towards a nonprofit, hired a lawyer. The other things with just the day to day, we have to, I need to find a way to, do a better job with the GreatBase. There's so many people that would help out. Just like these podcasts, we're getting close to 100, and I've told some people, hey, I know you're listening to these and you're busy, but we don't do show notes, and there's no notes from these. So it's always just a matter of more work. But a few things, I guess it ties in with a question, but as I say, I've been in the kid business since I was a kid. I think I have kid radar, and there's a kid I'm trying to work with. And, I'm talking to him about hair products now. I'm talking to him about jewelry, talking to him about sandals and sunglasses. And it reminds me of Steve Jobs, where I've got one point to end on, but this is a question for you, and I'll come back to my point to end on. But Steve Jobs, he always wore the same clothes. So this kid I'm talking to about jewelry and this and that, and I think we all have insecurities. It's been said that people have to, and I'm not there yet, but you have to. I hope I get there, but you have to be 80 years old before you figure out people aren't thinking about you anyway. But with Steve Jobs, always wear the same clothes every day, and he was asked, "Why do you wear the same clothes every day?" Because I don't want to think about what I have to wear.
Yeah.
Wear the same thing every day. So tell us. I know Johnny Cash wore all black, and
yeah,
I got a Johnny Cash point to end on, but why do you wear all black?
Yeah, it actually is really along the same lines. I can't remember if I, got the idea from, I did study some about Steve Jobs and whatnot, but me and my wife are trying to get more into the, a minimalist type lifestyle where we're not buying excessive things. And I've loved the color black for the longest period of time. Loved Batman growing up. I had a dog that was black. My race car was black. My first truck was black. My dad's race car trailer was black. And it just seemed natural. As I became an adult, I started thinking about it, and I was like, man, I found myself, at times waking up in the morning and I got to find a red shirt and the shorts to match and whatnot. It's like, I maybe spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the morning thinking about what to put on. And it's like, if I just start buying everything black,
that's good.
I want to think about it. I'll just grab a top, I'll grab some shorts, I'll grab my shoes, and I'm out the door. And I feel like, if I can save 5 minutes a day here and 5 minutes a day there, then I can be on the court a little bit more doing something else.
So you're not cheering for the New York Jets. You're going for the Raiders. It's not the Oakland Raiders anymore, the Las Vegas Raiders.
Vegas.
That's right, yeah. Black hole.
I think one of the theories behind that is that everyone has a kind of a finite number of decisions they're capable of making through the course of the day, and they didn't want to waste a decision on what they were going to wear, so just fill their closet with the same thing. I think Zuckerberg's
also it's natural. Well. It's natural sunscreen. So if you're standing outside in 90-degree weather and you feel yourself just burning up and all black, then you look for shade a little bit more. So I don't like wearing sunscreen, so it just makes me think about it a little bit more.
Well, I appreciate your time with us. I want to tell you that we have a long podcast, but you have the record now because you've done this back to back. This is going to be a 5-hour podcast because our listeners, just those things happen. The podcast we did a couple of weeks ago didn't record. But,
that's right. Yeah, I meant to set the record last week, but now unofficially I'm a little over 5 hours.
Yeah, so you got it. But here's one thing about Johnny Cash, and I tell junior tennis players, and I told them, okay, print it out, bring me a copy, is his song, A Boy Named Sue. That's very, very good mental toughness song. I do remember Colin's mother, Jenny, one time, and I think people from Arkansas might get tired of hearing Johnny Cash, and for just kind of out of the blue, not out of the black, she said, I'll listen to any music as long as it's not Johnny Cash. And at that time, I mean, in the minivan, I'm at that time driving. It had 2 tapes. One was Elvis Presley Christmas songs, and then Johnny Cash. But very seldom do I play music in the van. Once in a while, I will do this. I'll play music, and just enough to hear one lyric, and then try to make it a joke or a story. But no, I definitely try to. I love Johnny Cash music. Burn, burn, burn. Come on, Flanagan. Flanagan's not singing for us today, but
no Fergus O'Rourke, I'll tell you that much.
Not at all.
But with making the van a classroom, are you listening? I want kids when they get in the van, for our listeners, I want them. Granted that the parents, some parents will say, oh, they need to rest, they need to relax. Not right now. Right now we're coming from the track. Right now we're coming from the tennis courts. Right now we're coming from the tennis tournament. No, we're not interested in relaxing. I think of Walter Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky would, he'd play, his team would win, he'd score 5 goals. This is when he was a little kid. And he said that his father would have, and he was an easygoing guy, he said his father would have smoke coming out of his ears, that he was so intense on telling him what he did wrong. But, that's why Gretzky became Gretzky, is, Maria Sharapova, it's a great line. I figured, because Yuri was a yeller and a screamer, just got to do this better, got to do this better. I mean, with really good parenting, it's never good enough. It's like, no. And then you eat criticism like you eat cookies. But Gretzky's father, from the time you get in the car, if it was a 3-hour ride or if it was a 30-minute ride, he would coach him the entire car ride. But a lot of times, kids are just, they think their parent is against, their parents are not for them. Now, I know in tennis, I'll shut up here, but parents, really, the tiebreaker test, parents shouldn't talk to their kids, for the most part, about how to hit the ball, but where to hit the ball. Okay, let's do if you're going out and tossing your kids some balls. Let's feed you 10 balls. Can you hit them in this quadrant of the court? And, if you're not a technician, you're not a technician. Parents certainly can work a stopwatch. And I know parents, I deal with parents that are so much smarter than I am. They forgot this and forgot that, know much more than I do, but just the practicality. But no, I mean, the idea of the pre-academy and trying to help you with making, I think it's great that, more people should do that. They want to make tennis happen in their backyard. I don't think pros do that. That's one of the reasons that tennis is so much better in Europe. I mean, people are just hustling. They're out, the merchant of flesh, handing out business cards. They're the third base coach. They're the leech. They want to steal the player. We have, we'll interview more college coaches, but Brandon and I, we both have the chip on our shoulder because we spent a lot of time in the trenches. I know Brandon, he, like you, I know you guys know each other from
From podcast number 81.
No, but from podcast 81, now podcast 82, but no film. With Brandon, he has film where he can just knock it out of the park with teaching technique. But we could go over that another time. But to be here in South Florida, people are going to bop and shop. They're not going to stay with a coach who brought him to the dance. They're gonna look for bigger and better, and it's just amazing how a lot of times the parent, they just don't get that. Like even with our national organization, the USTA. I mean, granted they have wild cards, granted they have money, but sometimes even a parent, they move and they have to go to another coach. But if the coach is a technician, they should continually work on film. I do think with Hamilton, both girls, Little Mo champions. Lannis is certainly getting more recognition right now, but they need to let people continually know that they're from Arkansas. So if they're going to get to the point where they're going to play pro tennis, you need to have people. My son wasn't at that level. I mean, certainly I could have pushed some buttons and asked some people, but he was, and Lannis Hamilton's not at that level, even close at this point. To be in a point where you're going to start asking people for money, to get some help and. Gesundheit with
Gracias.
No, it's Dankeschön.
Talking about people hitting the ball well, one of my first memories actually, Brandon, of you had seen a video where it might have been Halloween where you were hitting a backhand and mimicking Andre Agassi, and it was pretty darn close. And it's actually a pretty vivid memory for me. I believe you had bandana on.
Oh, I had the whole outfit, everything from the shirt to the shoes. I'm a big Agassi fan. Yeah.
Oh, and that guy hits the ball so well. But Joe Public doesn't know that. They can't even interpret it. They just how the guy hit the ball so well. But rambling on, that's a song. But no, it's been great to have you on. Appreciate having you stepped up and done this a second time now. And what we're really trying to do through these podcasts is give value and help people with their tennis teaching, help people learn not only tennis teaching, but tennis playing. So sign off, Flanagan, from the Flanagan Tennis House. Actually, you can't forget Allington. He's the brains of the operations partner. But
True. Better accent too. Much better accent.
He's the M and FM. Yeah, from England.
No, the second time around, it's been a pleasure. Continue fighting the good fight. I think it's very admirable. You're like you said, you're staying at home and you're producing players from your own backyard, and just like myself, having a late start in the game and other interests, other passions. I think that brings a lot to the table, and so it's been a pleasure. Thanks for talking to us. No,
and I do think that the governing body of tennis. They need to recognize people like yourself, but also too is then if they know that you're studying all this content with Braden with science and Jacobson with stats and just Vandermeer group dynamics, and then really in the end it's I think if I were to end on one takeaway is U-Bahn in the garage. Obviously our thoughts and prayers are with Colin Matthews. What a great kid. The U-Bahn in the garage, that needs to happen. I hope our listeners really paid attention to that. We have a lot of free content. One would be to go to that course we have that also needs to be done again. It needs to be improved upon at 2.0. But 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years is that. And you go from the garage in front of the mirror, then you go to the driveway, and it's just basics, repeat.
Steve, you always said that, give credit where credit's due, and, the pillars and all the guys that you developed, pulled the system together with and put the name, GreatBase under. But, I have humongous gratitude for everything that you've done and how gracious you've always been as far as, from the first time I met you at Cary to being able to go to Cincinnati and spend time with you guys and Brookhaven and Dave Anderson and all the different coaches that I've got to work with and be associated with, to all the help that, you've given with Colin and Alanis and all the kids that have been participating in our program. I mean, I think at this point, all the kids that I've worked with in the past 10 years that are over the age of, say, 14, you've spent some time with. And, it's definitely changed my career and my goals and what's possible here in Arkansas. So hopefully, we can help carry the torch and do the best we can.
No, thanks for the kind words. And I'm going to hang up. And I'm going to convince Flanagan to get a puppy.
Good luck with that one.
I think he's got too much on his plate, but that would be definitely an extra variable. But again, all the best to you, your wife, and all the people you work with. Appreciate it. Thanks, Cole.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Good night. All right, Flanagan, why don't you sign us off, Flanagan, from the FM Tennis Performance Center in beautiful Boynton Beach. New York Jets, they're going to win the Super Bowl next year. That's my takeaway.
I don't think that's going to happen, but thanks for your optimism. No, another great podcast. Interesting to have a little deja vu, have a little repeat of that one, but I think we covered some different topics, covered a lot of the same things we talked about last time. Great guy. Great to speak to him.
Yeah, he's passionate. That's what the passion quotient. How much do you love it? And and I think it's being a giver, not a taker. But no, that's where Chuck Creasy talked about that, where the athletes in the small towns, and but I also think too, remember your roots. Parents say, give your kids roots and wings, and it's, with Colin, he's not on the tennis court now, but you think of someone like Alanis and Enya, to be able to go back and give back, and it's like that's they're at the national campus. Alanis is sometimes at the national campus working with Matt Clore, and that's what's great about it is it's the same content.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Matt's background as a player and all the bells and whistles with a big USTA center, but what basically is being done is this reinforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go back to the well. Anyway, podcast number 82, Flanagan. Whew, done in the books. Had to repeat it, and Cole Reeves has the record for the. It's not all published. We only have half of it. This one, and we lost the last one, but he's got the record.
He's got the record. Blew it out of the water.
All right.
Sayonara.
In the books. Thanks everybody for listening.